Chapter 527. The demonic path placed great importance on the demon body cultivation talent of new disciples, especially in the current situation where the seat of the Holy Palace was vacant. 2 days after Qin Yu received Zhao Qianyuan and Dong Hanju's reminder, he received news from the External Affairs Division that he would be undergoing the examination tomorrow. The examination process seemed quite complex and required the aid of a special environment. All new disciples that needed to undergo the examination had to arrive on a large speedcar at a set time. Qin Yu didn't have the bad habit of putting on airs as a master and appearing at the end. This was especially true after he confirmed how important today's examination was to him. There was still an hour before the scheduled time, so he arrived at the foot of the mountain early. After verifying his identity, he boarded the speedcar. It was clear that he wasn't the only one who was interested in today's demon body talent examination. There were already many people sitting on the speedcar. As they saw Qin Yu arrive, their complexions changed and the atmosphere became a bit tense. On the first day, although no one jumped out to make things difficult for Qin Yu besides Gong Jin, everyone didn't get along well with him. Qin Yu's expression was light. He only glanced around before looking away. He casually chose an empty seat and sat down, closing his eyes to rest. Time quietly passed. The number of new disciples boarding the speedcar increased. But the seat next to Qin Yu was still empty. Not just that, but every disciple that passed by him would subconsciously hold their breath and quicken their steps, as if they felt uncomfortable just being near him. Qin Yu was happy to enjoy the peace and quiet. Then, a loud voice sounded out in his ears. The demon body cultivation focuses on blood vitality. Young people have a burning blood vitality, and the earlier they start cultivating, the more likely they are to succeed. If they are too old, I fear they will only achieve half the results with twice the effort. It was Gong Jin. This fellow that he had slapped in the face with his words was still as loathsome as ever. He didn't seem to have learned at all. Actions were always more powerful than words. This saying was indeed true. Qin Yu decided that once he stabilized his footing, he would make this fellow regret his actions. Senior apprentice Brother Gong is right. Today, another person jumped out. In my opinion, some people should honestly stay in their residences and cultivate. If they go to take the examination with us youths, they will only be humiliating themselves. After all, what we're looking at today is cultivation talent, not cultivation. The third person to speak was actually a woman. She covered her mouth and smiled, her charm overflowing. Senior apprentice Brother Gong, Junior apprentice Brother Bao, please don't speak like that. Otherwise, he might become angry out of shame and attack us. The three of us are too young and aren't his match. Moreover, shouldn't we respect our elders? This woman spoke very politely, but she kept calling him old mister and respecting the elderly. Her mouth was really crafty. Qin Yu was immediately amused. Although he couldn't deal with them right now, he was prepared to amaze the world with a single brilliant feat. Bringing them along wasn't a bad idea either. So when he opened his eyes, he saw 2 men and a woman in front of him. Luckily, the demonic path's large speedcar was very spacious, allowing the 3 of them to stand in the aisle. Facing Qin Yu's eyes, the corners of the 3 people's faces were filled with ridicule and provocation. They were clearly telling him that they had come for him, so what could he do about it? Qin Yu took a deep breath and suppressed his anger. He said in a low voice, "What use is there in arguing? Facts speak louder than words." Gong Jin's lungs nearly exploded with anger. Now you know how to use the word talk. Yesterday when you were insulting me, I didn't see you having such a high level of awareness. But the more he acted like this, the more it showed that this surname Yao was angry. In Gong Jin's opinion, not only was he venting his anger, but he had also made great progress. Thinking about it, his anger disappeared. He raised his eyebrows and sent a message. Come on, you bastard, hurry up and hit me. Aren't you a badass? The speed car was silent. In truth, no one was stupid. If Gong Zhen and the others kept provoking Qin Yu again and again, there must be a story behind this. Because news of the demon blood crystal was too important, the high-level figures of the demonic path had issued a gag order. Thus, it hadn't spread out. Some people knew about Heavenly Demon City's Qi family, but some people thought that the Qi family didn't have the ability to do so. But, was the reason really important? Everyone looked at Qin Yu, waiting to see how he would respond. But, most people believed that he would choose to ignore them like before. In fact, this was indeed the best way to deal with the current situation. Although it was a bit cowardly, it was better than being schemed against by others. But today's development was different from what everyone expected. Qin Yu looked at the mocking faces of the several people. He clenched his teeth and said, "Do you dare to make a bet?" Gong Zhen sneered, "What bet?" Qin Yu said, "Let's use today's demon body talent test as a bet. If the test result is bad, then you have to agree to a condition that you won't cause any material harm." Bao Yihan's eyes brightened. "All right, let's make a bet." Gong Zhen was annoyed that this brat had stolen all the merit. She hurriedly said, "Today, all the cultivators on the speed car can testify for us. If you go back on your word, don't blame us for being rude." The female cultivator smiled. "Senior apprentice Brother Yao, count me in." He was just an old thing. No matter how tyrannical his strength was, his blood vitality was old and he didn't even have the qualifications to cultivate the demon body. As for the condition that he wouldn't cause any material harm, as long as she used it carefully, it would be more than enough to complete the mission. She certainly couldn't miss out on such a chance to earn merit. The three of them appeared calm on the surface, but they were inwardly pleasantly surprised. They never thought that the impenetrable and slippery Yao Bin would actually jump out on his own initiative today. As they thought of the rewards they might obtain after completing the mission, their hearts began to heat up. As for whether or not they would lose, that was impossible. It had to be known that there were three of them. As long as one of them defeated Yao Bin, then he would be finished. Moreover, these three didn't believe that they would lose to an old fellow whose blood vitality was so old and frail. Qin Yu coldly snorted and closed his eyes. His ears finally quieted down. He faintly smiled and began to think about how he would play after this. Although he didn't know what the demonic path's testing method was, Qin Yu's demon body had risen to the sovereign level and he was confident in his own cultivation talent. Even if he couldn't do anything this time, he would still teach them an unforgettable lesson. He would also warn everyone that his temper wasn't too good, so it was best not to provoke him. The speed car was extremely fast. Even so, it took them nearly 6 hours to arrive at the testing area. Gong Zhen, Bao Yihan, and the female cultivators sneered as they got off the speed car first. Qin Yu didn't join the crowd. Instead, he waited for most of the people to arrive before he stood up and left the speed car. What entered their eyes was a massive crater. However, this volcano seemed to have been dormant for many years. At the edges of the crater, there were many traces of magma solidifying. One could imagine that countless years ago, this dark and cold mouth had once recklessly spewed out destructive strength. Outside the crater, there were already many people waiting. The ones responsible for guarding the crater were the true demon guards. This was within everyone's expectations. Since the demon body was related to the throne of the Holy Palace, it was natural for the true demon guards to come. 3 black-robed old men with indifferent expressions appeared. They were clearly the leaders of the crowd. Their cold eyes swept over everyone and they waved their hands. "Begin." It seemed as if they weren't interested. One couldn't blame them for being indifferent. The quality of this batch of disciples was simply too poor. Moreover, they had already been confirmed. If it weren't for the rules, they wouldn't have bothered wasting time here. Since this was the case, they had to hurry. The sooner they passed the formalities, the sooner everyone could return. The crater in front of you is where the test will take place. Listen to my orders. Restrain all of your strength and jump in. Remember, no matter what you feel in the crater, do not use your strength to resist it. Otherwise, don't blame me for not reminding you. After a sacred palace cultivator finished speaking, he winked and the true demon guards guarding the crater retreated like a receding tide. Jump! No one hesitated. There were nearly 2,000 new disciples. Even if some of them were anxious, none of them dared to hesitate at this time. The pitch-black and icy crater swallowed up everyone that fell down like dumplings, like the maw of a giant monster. When it was Qin Yu's turn, he jumped down. His field of vision was quickly covered by darkness. Then, he felt his surroundings fall silent. His divine sense was suppressed by an invisible strength, unable to reach out. But after carefully listening for a long time, he could hear the absolute silence around him. This allowed Qin Yu to determine that he was alone. What about the cultivators that jumped down with him? Qin Yu didn't know where they had gone. He couldn't help but feel nervous. Could it be that today's test had been tampered with and someone wanted to deal with him? But in this sort of grand occasion where the Holy Palace was leading, who would be so fierce? Wouldn't they have some scruples? As Qin Yu was lost in thought, his body was suddenly wrapped up by a gentle strength. Then, his rapidly sinking body began to slow down. Like a falling feather, he swayed for a moment before finally floating in the air. Qin Yu tried moving his hands and feet. This strength seemed to be entrusted to him and didn't have any intention of imprisoning him. He carefully sensed that there was no uneasy aura around him. Qin Yu relaxed a little. It seemed that in this situation, someone wasn't trying to harm him. Suddenly, Qin Yu keenly felt a trace of a cool aura appear from nothingness, drilling into his body through his pores. It slowly wriggled, starting from the surface of his skin and slowly penetrating deep into his flesh and blood. What followed was an unbearable numbing feeling, like countless ants were crawling in his heart. This feeling was extremely uncomfortable. It wasn't as fierce and painful as it was fierce and painful. Rather, it was warm, soft, and difficult to resist. Thinking of the Holy Palace cultivator's warning just now, Qin Yu clenched his teeth and allowed this cool aura to penetrate into his body. Luckily, his will had always been firm and he had experienced many tempering experiences, so his thoughts remained calm. At this moment, Qin Yu was suddenly enlightened. Perhaps the standard to measure the talent of a demon body was the amount of cool aura one's body could absorb. With this thought in mind, he controlled his body to relax even more. He didn't defend himself at all, allowing the cool aura to explore deeper into his body. Time slowly passed. Although the numbness and itchiness were unbearable, Qin Yu believed he could still withstand it. Originally everything was normal, but when the first wisp of cool aura touched the demon blood crystal stored in Qin Yu's body, it was like a spark falling into a boundless sea of oil. Bang! Terrifying flames instantly erupted. The burning sensation caused Qin Yu to deeply understand what it meant to be in so much pain that he wished he were dead. Luckily, what was burning wasn't the demon blood crystal, but the cool aura that broke into his body. Or, it was more accurate to say that it was the product of the cool aura fusing with the demon blood crystal. When the cool aura was exhausted, the flames extinguished with it. Qin Yu sucked in a breath of cold air. Just as he was rejoicing that he had just survived a calamity, his eyes widened, filled with shock and anger. The cool aura that seeped into his body was like a shark that smelled blood. After a brief pause, it desperately rushed towards the demon blood crystal. At the same time, the speed at which the cool aura outside entered his body suddenly rose by dozens of times. Even with Qin Yu's calm state of mind, he was so frightened that his soul nearly left his body. Just a wisp of cool aura had caused him to experience pain that broke through his limits. Now that he rushed over like a hive of bees, he might even ignite all the demon blood crystals at the same time. At that time, even if he didn't burn to death, he would still die from the pain. Qin Yu had already thrown all thoughts of resisting to the back of his mind. His little life would soon be forfeit, so who cared what the consequences were? But just as he thought of resisting, before he could erupt his strength, his entire body stiffened. The cool aura that flowed into his body suddenly turned into an invisible cage that nailed him to the ground. Bang! What a vast expanse of brilliant flames. It was like the most gorgeous fireworks in the world, tumbling and spinning, weaving together into a beautiful picture. Unfortunately, this was happening within Qin Yu's body, so it was destined that no one would be able to see it. He could only appreciate it for himself. And what was even more unfortunate was that Qin Yu was thinking about how he hadn't died yet. He simply didn't have any thoughts of appreciating it. What a pity! Outside the mouth of the volcano, as all the new disciples jumped in, space began to rapidly fluctuate. Then, as these fluctuations spread out, countless overlapping spaces appeared. If one looked carefully at each overlapping space, they would see the same dark nothingness. But soon, they began to change. Countless points of weak light gushed out from this darkness, constantly wriggling and growing. Some of them soon turned into candlelight that continued to grow brighter. Of course, a large portion of the dark nothingness didn't change after the flames reached the candlelight level. Although they didn't have much hope for these new disciples, as the 3 holy palace elders in charge of today's examination saw this, their lips couldn't help but twitch. Let alone discovering talents, the performance of these people was simply a waste of precious materials, a waste of resources. It had to be known that a single examination consumed a considerable amount of resources. As the 3 holy palace elders thought about how nearly 2,000 people had been examined today, they nearly grasped their hearts. This time they had really suffered a great loss. After the candlelight level was the bonfire level. Of the nearly 2,000 new disciples, only a few dozen had reached this level. The only thing that comforted the 3 holy palace elders was that although most of these people had stopped growing, there were still 7 dark spaces where the flames were continuing to rise. After the bonfire level was the star level. This was already considered a passing grade. As long as one diligently cultivated, there was a chance that they would be able to enter the next level of the demon body. But this was only a hope. The chances of success were 20 to 30%. Of the 7 dark spaces, 2 of them ultimately failed to make a breakthrough. Although the flames were much more vibrant, they still hadn't reached the level of condensing into stars. A moment later, 5 stars appeared in the darkness. Although they were all dim, for better or worse they were still small fish. Today wasn't without harvests. The 3 holy palace elders let out a breath of relief. For better or worse, as long as they had a bit of faith, they wouldn't ask for anything more. But a pleasant surprise often occurred when there was no longer any hope. In the dark spaces, the 5 stars began to simultaneously brighten once more. The 3 holy palace elders were startled for a moment before revealing a happy expression. After the star level was the crescent moon level. A disciple with this level of talent would have a 90% chance of entering the next level of the demon body. They might even be able to reach an even higher level. However, they didn't have too much hope. Although the perception of a star and crescent moon seemed to be only one level, there was an essential difference. The first star stopped brightening. Then the second, and then the third. Only 2 dark spaces continued to brighten. They were like true stars in the winter night sky, becoming extremely dazzling. The crescent moon wasn't far away. The volcano was quiet. Everyone, including the 3 holy palace elders, subconsciously held their breath. Stepping into the crescent moon realm meant that the demon body was within reach. This was the crossroads of their destiny. Whether they would fade into the crowd or soar into the heavens, all of this depended on this moment. Even if this didn't concern them, they still felt nervous. Many people clenched their fists and gulped. Suddenly, one of the stars trembled, as if it wanted to expand and erupt. But after several attempts, it was unable to take that critical step. The three holy palace elders sighed. Sure enough, this star soon fell silent, no longer changing. At this point, there was only one star-level star left. It continued to brighten and continued to brighten. In the silence, the flow of time seemed to slow down. After an unknown period of time, the star suddenly trembled. The transformation had begun. The star just now was stuck at this step. If it couldn't make a breakthrough, then everything before would have been in vain. Perhaps it was only a breath of time, or perhaps even shorter, but the trembling star suddenly shined with a brilliant light. When the light faded away, a crescent moon quietly appeared in the dark space. It was extremely small, like a newly sprouted willow. It gave off a feeling of extreme fragility, as if it could break with just the slightest bit of force. But no matter how small it was, a crescent moon was still a crescent moon. This was an essential difference. A holy palace elder stroked his beard and smiled. His eyes revealed true gratification. He had finally gained something. The demon body was originally one of the most difficult supernatural powers to cultivate in the world. It represented the unsurpassed body-tempering method of the demonic path. If one had a crescent moon talent, then as long as they diligently cultivated, they would have a chance of touching upon the emperor level. This could already be considered a great harvest. After all, in the current holy palace, the highest rank of the demon body was only the emperor level. This unexpected surprise wasn't wasted. The materials that the disciples worked so hard to gather haven't been wasted. Call this crescent moon disciple over. In the future, his cultivation will be conducted in the holy palace. Another holy palace elder said with a smile. The third elder's eyes flashed. Up until now, I have not had a single outstanding disciple. I hope that the two of you can help me. The smiling elder immediately stopped smiling. You don't have a disciple you're proud of, but do you think I have one? There is no room for discussion. The second elder coughed several times. The three of us are responsible for today's assessment. According to the rules, we all have the qualifications to accept disciples. Since that's the case, let this junior choose for himself. He seemed to be filled with confidence. The three of them looked at each other. Saber light flashed and sword shadows flashed. Then, with a light snort, they didn't say anything. They were all thinking about what conditions this crescent moon disciple would bring out to move him. But what happened next caused the three of them to forget about their careful plans. The holy palace elders who boasted of themselves as calm and collected suddenly widened their eyes. This was because the crescent moon was brightening. Although the brightness was small, it was very steady. There was a strange charm to it, like flowers blooming in spring. Chapter 528. Moonstep martial artists already had the qualifications to attack the Emperor realm. It was just that depending on the grade, the chances of success varied. For instance, at the Crescent Moon realm, the crescent moon was like a willow, thin as a hook. The chances of stepping into the Emperor realm were no more than 20%. But this crescent moon in front of them only stabilized a little. Then, like a bamboo shoot breaking out of the ground, it stretched and grew, becoming increasingly plump. Before long, the willow bud became a semicircle, as if it had been cut in half by a sword. It was clean and dazzling. Half Moon Realm. At this level, the chances of reaching the Emperor realm were at least 30%. A 30% chance was already amazing. At this time, all of the Holy Palace elders that had their eyes glued to this half-moon were short of breath. From crescent moon to half-moon, although there was no essential difference, it represented that the potential of this moon-step disciple had suddenly doubled or even more. They hadn't had much hope for today's test, but looking at it now, it was as if a shining little golden man had been dug out from the sand. If they could receive this moon-step disciple as a disciple, then passing on their legacy wouldn't be a problem at all. In the future, they might even have a chance to carry forward their respective inheritances. This was no longer a simple disciple, but a hope for the future. As long as they could win him over, let alone shedding all pretense of cordiality, it was worth it even if they were beaten until they bled. However, before the sacred palace elders, who had a fierce look in their eyes, could say anything, they subconsciously widened their eyes in shock. They suddenly discovered that what had been dug out from the sand wasn't a little golden man, but a mountain of gold that made their hearts tremble. The half-moon was still brightening. Moon steps 3 boundaries: crescent moon, half-moon, full moon. Full moon was the strongest of the moon step. Although it wasn't a 100% chance of reaching the Emperor realm, as long as it wasn't too bad, the chances were at least 70%. And most importantly, the full moon realm talent had a chance of attacking the Emperor realm. Even if the chances of success were less than 5%, as long as there was hope, it was more than enough for the Holy Palace to pay great attention and cultivate them. Emperor realm, in the current Holy Palace, there were only a few old monsters that had gone into life or death seclusion for many years that might have reached this boundary. In the demonic path, although there weren't many sovereign-level demon bodies, there were still dozens of them that could be found. Yet, it had been many years since anyone had successfully broken through to the Emperor realm. If they could nurture an Emperor-level existence. As soon as this thought appeared in their minds, the 3 Holy Palace elders trembled like sieves from excitement. The half-moon extended outwards, and strands of light constantly surged out, making it more and more rounded. This process wasn't fast, but it felt very stable. At the mouth of the volcano, in the silence, countless widened eyes of the masters simultaneously had the same thought. He could succeed. Then, the half-moon truly became complete. It was like an enormous disk, scattering down its own brilliance. Even though they were already mentally prepared, when they truly saw this scene, they could not help but suck in a breath of cold air. Full moon tier. This was the full moon tier. It was said that amongst the descendants of the previous Holy Lord, there was a genius that had appeared. His demon body talent had only just reached this level. He was regarded as the hope of his family's resurgence and was highly valued by the entire Holy Palace. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, they wouldn't have believed that such a prodigy would actually appear among this batch of rotten new disciples. As long as he didn't die along the way, this new disciple would have the throne in his hands, and he would be able to become an emperor. His future was limitless. From the start, he had already left all his peers far behind him. Some people couldn't help but envy him. Perhaps some people were jealous, but they didn't dare to show it too clearly. If they provoked this person, wouldn't that just be asking for trouble? Deep down, everyone wanted to know who this new, future big shot was. Just who was he? A full moon tier isn't considered a great figure, brother, just what is in your head. Pour it out and change it. Within the demonic path, there had always been a restlessness that was difficult to detect. The source of this restlessness was the empty Holy Palace. This was because the Holy Palace Master was not only the nominal leader of the demonic path, but he was also an indispensable and transcendent existence of the demonic path, a peak combat strength that suppressed all directions. The Holy Palace Master's vacancy seemed fine on the surface, and the demonic path was still strong and stable. But once a major accident occurred, it was likely that a series of changes would occur. From top to bottom, the demonic path desperately hoped for a new Holy Lord to be born as soon as possible, of course, who the new Holy Lord was and whose interests they represented were new problems that involved extremely dangerous struggles. It was because of this that when the demon envoy first discovered this, he didn't dare to speak of it. He even had to carefully look for another excuse to contact Qin Yu. There was no need to elaborate too much here. In short, there was one point that the demonic path placed an incomparably high value on demon body talent. Imperceptibly, all demonic path cultivators would look up to those with superior demon body talent. The demonic path cultivators that were already shocked, envious, and incredulous enough suddenly discovered after a moment of silence that they could be even more shocked, envious, and incredulous. This was because in the dark space, the only full moon had suddenly fallen. Without any warning, it was inconceivably fast. Countless people widened their eyes, their minds falling into chaos. They felt as if they had heard information related to this scene before. In the end, the Holy Palace elders had stronger minds. Moreover, with their status, they knew much more. Moonfall. The Holy Palace elder who first spoke up and tried to play the sympathy card and accept a disciple suddenly screamed out loud. Although the two beside him didn't speak, the twitching of their lips and eyebrows was enough to show just how agitated they were right now. As the countless confused demonic path cultivators heard these words, it was like a bolt of thunder had fallen from the heavens, splitting them in half. They suddenly recalled some information they had heard about the incomplete demon body. One of them was star condensation, gathering moon, moonfall, sunrise. Now that the moon had fallen, could the sun rise smoothly? If it could, then wouldn't that mean that after tens of thousands of years, the demonic path would finally have a holy demon son with a sun-step demon body? Demon Son was a title that all demon body cultivators obtained after reaching the king level. It represented their status as a direct descendant of the demonic path. As for the holy demon son, it had nothing to do with one's cultivation realm. It only looked at one's talent. As long as one had a sun-step talent, they could obtain a title. Their status was far above that of a demon son. In theory, they were ranked even higher than elders and protectors. Unfortunately, there were very few of them. Even if one looked through the ancient texts of the demonic path, they could be counted on one hand. But without exception, all holy demon sons became incomparably dazzling existences of their era. Of course, not all of them were able to smoothly grow. But as long as they didn't die, they would have a place in the entire land of divinity and demons. Could it be that today, they would witness the birth of a holy demon son? The three holy palace elders fell silent. This was because they suddenly discovered that after completing moonfall, regardless of whether or not this new disciple could ascend, the talent he displayed was enough to arouse the attention of a great figure of the demonic path. He was no longer someone they could take in as a disciple. They waited in silence. The air seemed to freeze and all the demonic path cultivators stopped breathing. In this stifling silence, a 10th sun quietly appeared in the skies of the Holy Land's small world. Strictly speaking, it wasn't complete. There was only the outline of a single sun, as if it were a scene of a total solar eclipse. Holy Palace. Beneath the Bodhi tree, a great bell that had been silent for countless years suddenly began to ring. A grand sound spread out, triggering some sort of resonance. In the next moment, the entire Holy Land's small world was filled with a dense fog of heaven and earth spiritual strength. Rumble rumble, a loud roar swept out in all directions like great waves. Sunstep first boundary, Shadow Sunday. The sun was like a shadow, ethereal and illusory. But no matter how ethereal it was, no matter how illusory it was still a sunstep. Star gathering, moonfall, sun rising. The latter part was sun rising, bell ringing, world shaking, welcoming the new lord. When the demon envoy arrived, everyone at the mouth of the volcano still hadn't regained their composure. He wasn't in the mood to care about these people's rudeness. He closed his eyes and sensed with rapt attention. Although the demon body talent test was extremely strict, as one of the Holy Palace's demon envoys, he cultivated a secret technique of the Holy Palace and was able to sense the internal energy. He opened his eyes. Although he was pleasantly surprised, there was also a bit of worry that he couldn't suppress. It really was Yao Bin. Before, the demon envoy only had a 40 to 50% chance of success. But after today's events, he was certain that Yao Bin was the person he had been waiting for. This should have been a good thing, but the commotion that Yao Bin caused today was far too great. So great that even he had no way to cover it up. Sweeping his eyes around, he saw that all the powerhouses of the previous Holy Lord's descendant tribe had arrived. All of them had gloomy expressions and a cold light shined in their eyes. As he thought about the full moon realm genius that appeared not too long ago in the descendant tribe of the previous Holy Lord, the demon envoy felt an even greater headache. But a headache was just a headache. Since he had confirmed that Qin Yu was the person he had been waiting for, the demon envoy wouldn't allow anyone to harm him. Figure after figure appeared above the mouth of the volcano. They all maintained a distance from the overlapping space in order to show their respect to the Holy Palace. But this didn't stop them from using their own methods to probe the new disciple within the overlapping space that had caused today's phenomenon. Soon, these great figures of the demonic path revealed looks of surprise. They were blocked by the distorted space so that they couldn't be seen by the outside world. It was actually him. After a brief moment of thought, some people frowned, some people sneered, and some people's eyes shined with a divine light. Above the mouth of the volcano, the overlapping space violently trembled, as if some formidable strength was erupting from within, surpassing the limits of what they could withstand. As a result, the overlapping spaces began to collapse, banishing the newly matriculated disciples within them to the outside world. The originally empty mouth of the volcano was suddenly overcrowded. After a brief daze, they seemed to sense something. They looked up into the skies and saw the newly born 10th sun, their mouths slowly opening. Qin Yu felt as if he had already wandered through the 18 layers of hell several hundred times. Even though his will was firm and he was powerful, he still thought of death more than once. Unfortunately, he couldn't die. Although it was like 100 volcanoes had ignited within his body, there was still a strength that protected his mortal body. His soul curled up into a ball and his consciousness reached the limit of collapse countless times. Every time this happened, a cool feeling would pour in, causing his blurry consciousness to wake up. After struggling in pain for an unknown period of time, Qin Yu suddenly had a flash of enlightenment. Perhaps he really wouldn't die today. Since he wouldn't die, what sort of pain would it bring him? Chapter 529. The 10 suns in the skies reflected each other. In the entire demonic path Holy Land's small world, everyone looked up in shock, their eyes filled with disbelief. The moon fell, the sun rose, the bell rang, the heaven and earth shook, and the new master was welcomed. Most of the demonic path cultivators were shaken and didn't have time to think of anything. But for those that were paying close attention to this day, their hearts were surging like a sea. Divine light surged in Zhao Qianyuan's eyes as he stared at the 10th sun in the skies. He frowned for a moment before composing himself. He didn't reveal much shock. This was because he had already chosen his path. As long as he patiently walked it, Zhao Qianyuan was confident that his achievements would not be beneath anyone else's. After all, Dong Hanzhu was not the only one who was born different. But he had to admit that Yao Bin's performance today had far exceeded his expectations. Sun-ranked, he already had the qualifications to touch upon the Supreme Saint seat. Even if the matters of the small world were sealed, after today he would still become a peerless proud son of heaven of the demonic path whose name would spread throughout the world. But at the same time, this reputation would bring him a lot of trouble. Zhao Qinyuan smiled. He had personally experienced this sort of tempering before. The difference was that he had already left seclusion and Yao Bin had only just entered. I hope you're able to break through the darkness and completely liberate yourself. In this vast world, it's truly too lonely if you don't have a companion. As for the cause of today's phenomenon, was it Yao Bin? In Zhao Qinyuan's eyes, there was no doubt at all. He believed in his own eyes and he believed in his own heart. There was another person who also firmly believed it to be Qin Yu. Dong Hanzhu pursed his lips tightly. His eyes dimmed slightly, but they soon burned with a raging flame. He was born with a great destiny and was destined to have unparalleled achievements. That was why he was arrogant and looked down on his peers. Zhao Qinyuan had taught him the first lesson and Qin Yu the second. Although the two of them hadn't fought yet, he couldn't lie to himself. This was absolutely a formidable existence no weaker than Zhao Qinyuan. Similarly, it could thoroughly defeat him. But so what? He, Dong Hanzhu, was destined to shine in this glorious era, to dominate for 100,000 years. The competition between you and me has just begun. I will not be discouraged, but please do not be arrogant. One day, I will defeat all of you at your most glorious moment. In the luxurious courtyard, Sun Zifu let out a long breath. He knew that he no longer needed to hide and could let go of the guilt in his heart. After today, the momentum of Yao Bin's meteoric rise was already established. Even if there would be some trouble, it was enough for the Sun family to bet. The reward promised to him in the pocket dimension would soon arrive. As a member of the family, Sun Zifu was very confident in his judgment. He could only watch helplessly as the people around him climbed higher and higher. If he didn't want to look up to them forever, he would have to start working hard. These muddle-headed years had been filled with excitement and memories, but most of them had been wasted. Sun Zifu sighed with emotion. He turned around and walked towards the cultivation chamber. He was luckier than the average person. Because of his background, after wasting precious time, he still had a chance to make up for it. If it was destined that the sun and moon would shine together in the future, he would also become a shining star in the sky that could not be ignored. Even if he couldn't compete with the sun and moon, he still wanted to leave behind his own ripples in the river of time. No one was willing to be mediocre. Because of Qin Yu, the most dazzling figures of the demonic path's future had their fighting spirit aroused. While they were triumphantly advancing towards that magnificent future, he himself had encountered a great deal of trouble. The strange cool strength that gushed out from the dark space seemed to be unable to withstand Qin Yu's terrifying swallowing power and began to gradually wither away. At the start, because the cool strength decreased, the raging volcanoes within his body began to cool down. This rapidly reduced the pain that Qin Yu had to bear. But soon, the joy in his heart turned into a deep fear. This was because he discovered that the strength that protected his body was also disappearing. The volcanoes had cooled down but they still burned. Moreover, it seemed as if they would continue burning for some time. Without the protection of his mortal body, Qin Yu silently calculated and discovered that he wouldn't be able to last until the volcanoes were extinguished. Soon, he would be burnt to a crisp from the inside out. The 10th sun in the skies gradually turned red. Faint traces of brilliant colors began to extend from the frame of the great sun, making it even more striking. The moon steppe had 3 boundaries, and the sun steppe was also divided into different levels. Shadow Sunday. The great sun was like a shadow, like a dream, like an illusion. It was red and dyed from the inside out until it was completely crimson. This was the red sun. But now, one could easily discover that the brilliant red that dyed the interior of the great sun was becoming less and less. Seeing this, a thought appeared in everyone's hearts. Today's unexpected drama was finally coming to an end. No one had the qualifications to mention the name of the previous Holy Lord, and the descendants he left behind didn't dare to blaspheme the Holy Lord. Thus, they removed half of the Lin character and called themselves the Mu clan. Now, the several authoritative figures of the Mu clan had ashen complexions. Although they had managed to reach the sun step, it was only the lowest Shadow Sunday. Indeed, the Shadow Sun had a chance to reach the Holy Lord level, but the chances were slim. At the very least, in the records of the demonic path's Holy Lords, there was no record of a Shadow Sun succeeding. In order to become a Holy Lord, one had to be at least at the Red Sun realm. This was the consensus of the high-level figures of the demonic path. As long as one didn't have a high chance of becoming a Holy Lord, then things could still be done. As the descendants of the Holy Lord, the Mu clan naturally had their own special inheritances. Mu Mo still had a chance. The demon envoy sighed inwardly. The edges of the Shadow Sun were already red, but they weren't able to go any deeper. This was truly a pity. However, the result wasn't completely bad. The more outstanding Yao Bin's performance today, the more dangerous the situation would be. Although the Shadow Sun was a threat, with the demon envoy's help and care, there shouldn't be any problems. Looking at the Mu clan that had relaxed expressions, the demon envoy's eyes revealed a bit of coldness. He didn't have a Holy Lord inheritance, but in the endless years of the demonic path, there had been more than one Holy Lord. The final result of the competition was still unknown. As the demon envoy was thinking about how to arrange things for Qinyu, one of the 3 Holy Palace elders responsible for managing today's talent test suddenly paled. He seemed to inadvertently look down and see a corner of the white stone in his sleeve. His pupils violently shrank, shock and disbelief filling his face. His first thought was that he had to speak up. But as soon as he moved, he stopped. This was because with his current status, he had been promoted by the Mu family. If he spoke up today, then both sides would inevitably turn against each other. He wasn't alone anymore. He had children, relatives, and friends. Just half a month ago, he had given a name to his newly born great-grandson. A single move would destroy all of this. Beads of sweat dripped down his forehead and his complexion paled. Luckily, everyone was focused on the Shadow Sun in the skies and didn't notice his expression. As the crimson light faded and was about to disappear, a Holy Palace elder suddenly said, "What a pity." Another person nodded, disappointment written all over his face. "My Holy Palace has existed for a long time and it's been difficult for a disciple to reach the saint level, but he's actually missing the final step. The Shadow Sun, the Red Sun, he's only one step away, but there's almost no chance of reaching the saint level." The second Holy Palace elder sighed. "I have no idea how many years it will be before a second Sun step disciple appears. I fear we won't be able to see one in this life. When you and I joined the Holy Palace, we devoted ourselves to finding a disciple to inherit the throne of the Holy Lord. Our lives have been mediocre without any achievements, and we're ashamed of our respected teachers." The Holy Palace elder stiffened. A scene appeared in his mind. He was young at that time, and he had made a vow in front of the Holy Palace Master that he would use the rise of the Holy Palace to restore its former glory as his life's mission. His body shivered more and more. "Old Wu, what's wrong?" His friend beside him finally discovered something was wrong. That's right, they were friends. Although he had just been thinking that he wouldn't hesitate to bleed for a disciple, the 10,000 years of friendship between them couldn't be erased. Wu Xianshou looked up. His pale face revealed a smile that gave off a feeling of clarity, as if he had let go of some great obsession. "It's nothing. I was just thinking about something and I've finally figured it out." He paused for a moment. "You don't need to be disappointed. Perhaps you and I will really be able to witness a miracle today." He waved his sleeves, puffed out his chest, and walked forwards. He left behind 2 old friends who were dumbfounded, their eyes wide with surprise. Wu Xianshou bowed and lifted up the white stone with both hands. He said in a low voice, "Demon envoy and all lords, please replenish the energy for the test so that the proud sons of heaven of the demonic path will not be filled with hatred." With these words, the world fell deathly silent. Everyone's eyes focused on the white stone in his hands. Any demonic path cultivator that knew about talent testing felt their hearts tremble. This was because this white stone should be blue in color, and that blue color was the energy needed to test the demon body's talent. Or, it was more accurate to say that the demon body's talent wasn't a test, but rather an activation. This blue energy was needed to activate the demon body. The demonic path had paid a tremendous price in order to collect it. But now, the blue energy had been exhausted. The demon envoy's eyes widened. At this moment, his heart beat like a drum. Even though he had told himself that the final result of the competition had yet to be decided, he was still deceiving himself. However, if one said that he was not disappointed, he would be deceiving himself and others, because the Shadow Sun was the Shadow Sun. The difficulty of reaching the saint level was so great that it could make people despair. But now, the situation had reversed. It wasn't that Yao Bin's talent wasn't enough, but that he didn't have enough energy to fully activate his potential. In the blink of an eye, the demon envoy had made a decision. Since Yao Bin had caused such a ruckus today, even if he stopped at Shadow Sun, he would still be a thorn in the side of others. Then, he might as well make him shine even brighter and let everyone know that he had the talent to become a saint lord. Some people would hate him even more, but at the same time, there would be people willing to bet on him. The demon envoy lifted a hand and grasped forwards. Space shattered. Then, countless blue clouds gushed out from within. They seemed to be covered by an invisible strength. They didn't float in all directions, but instead rushed into the pitch-black crater in the ground. As the leader of the Mu clan saw this, a cold light rose in his eyes. But, he clenched his teeth and didn't dare to stop it. Today, in front of everyone, a disciple with the talent of a saint lord could not be allowed to be harmed. Otherwise, they would invite the wrath of the entire demonic path. The Mu family could not withstand this. Mu Xianglin's cold and gloomy eyes fell on Wu Xianshou. If looks could kill, he would have already become a pile of minced meat. Wu Xianshou lowered his head, guilt on his face. But, his eyes were calm and peaceful. Righteousness was divided into big and small. Today's actions might make it difficult for him in the future, but he wouldn't regret it. What's more, this step might be an investment with infinite potential. Qin Yu felt as if he had come back to life. Then, he discovered that the limits of his pain tolerance had been refreshed once more. Now that he withstood the burning of the volcano, in a protected state, he felt much more relaxed. Perhaps it was because his resistance had increased, or perhaps the burning pain of the volcano would soon end. As the saying goes, if you hit someone with a stick then give them a date. If it was painful then it was painful, but there was no compensation at all. Just where was his harvest? The Shadow Sun continued to turn red. The rapid changes caused those with weaker mental fortitude to clutch their chests. It wasn't over yet. Was there no end to it? Did he have to scare someone to death before he was satisfied? The great figures standing a distance away from the volcano all had dignified expressions. Perhaps they didn't care too much about the Shadow Sun, but if they took another step forward, then they would have the qualifications to place their chips. Of course, before placing their chips, they would carefully observe and judge before making a final decision. But this was already a change. At the very least, in their eyes, he was no longer a young and immature new disciple of the demonic path, an ant whose life or death they could casually control. He had the potential to compete for the future, so he would naturally obtain a certain degree of their recognition. The demon envoy relaxed a little. He had made the right gamble this time. He could feel the changes in the auras of some people. He didn't hope that these people would be like him and unhesitatingly step forward to protect Yao Bin. As long as they stood idly by, that would be a tremendous harvest. The demon envoy's eyes fell onto the 10th great sun in the skies. He muttered to himself, "Since you have surpassed my control and exposed yourself to the sunlight, I ask you to take out the strongest proof and tell them that you are the best choice. But no matter what, this road will not be easy to walk. Perhaps you will succeed, or perhaps you will fail. But I hope that you can turn back without regrets. So, please erupt with everything you have." Qin Yu really erupted. The shadow sun turned into a red sun. It steadily rose, almost without pause. Then, at the center of this crimson-red sun that seemed to suppress the mind, as if it were looking straight at a boundless sea of blood, a spot of pure white appeared. Mu Xianglin's body swayed and all the blood drained from his face. He pushed away the person supporting him, the chill in his eyes no longer concealed. The third boundary of the sun step, white sun. There was a saying, "The white sun is the clear sky, those who become the white sun can control the clear sky." The shadow sun had no hope of reaching the saint step. The red sun had a 10% chance of success and the white sun had a 30% chance. This was already the strongest the demon body could display. He could actually become the white sun. He dared to become the white sun. How could he? At this moment, all of Mu Xianglin's original plans had fallen to nothing. This was because he was well aware that no one would help the Mu family again. This was the deterrence of the white sun boundary. No one was willing to provoke a proud son of heaven of the demonic path that had a high chance of becoming the next saint monarch. But at the same time, the killing intent in Mu Xianglin's heart reached its peak. Without a new saint monarch, the Mu family would be the descendant of the saint monarch, enjoying all sorts of privileges and status. But once the saint monarch was born, all of this would vanish into thin air. The Mu family had been strong for these past years and had made countless enemies. If they lost the halo of being the descendant of the saint monarch, they would inevitably be greeted by countless wolves and tigers. He no longer had a path to retreat. If he didn't want his family to collapse and be uprooted by others, he could only continue onwards to the end. Only the descendants of the Mu family could become the saint monarch. Everyone else would die. When the red sun in the skies turned white, Qin Yu finally realized what he had obtained today. As he listened to the clear cracking sounds emitting from his body, he suddenly discovered that this red date was far, far too large. It was so large that he had an intense impulse to relive the pain he experienced today several more times. Chapter 530. The moment it transformed into pure white, there was no difference between the 10 suns in the skies. Then, the skies of the Holy Land's small world seemed to be wiped away by an invisible hand. The clouds scattered, revealing a clear blue sky without the least bit of impurities. This was like a curtain decorated with 10 blazing suns. The 10 suns intersected, their halos overlapping, refracting and diffusing, making the scene in front of them seem a bit more dreamlike. At this time, outside the volcano, the demonic path cultivators were in a trance. A stirring feeling rose in their hearts, as if they were witnessing the birth of a legend. Then, they couldn't help but think, just how far could the person who caused this world phenomenon reach in the future? No one could give an answer. Even the silent and lofty demonic path great figures had complex expressions in their eyes. What was common was that all of them revealed a thoughtful and cautious look. If the shadow sun didn't matter and the red sun only needed to be looked at, then the third realm white sun had the qualifications to have these great figures pay attention to him. This was true attention. The holy demon sun with a white sun boundary talent had an extremely high chance of becoming the demon monarch. Taking a step back, even if he couldn't smoothly enter the holy palace, he would still have extremely high achievements. Although this sort of potential needed time to slowly awaken, the future prospects were so bright that it was worth investing in. At the very least, he had to maintain a proper attitude and not provoke a powerful enemy in the future for himself. To be able to stand out amongst countless cultivators, to become a rock and become an influential figure of the demonic path, while not every one of them was an intelligent person, none of them were idiots. Today, Qin had used his superb performance to earn a layer of protection for himself. He had flattened the road to the future beneath his feet a little. Those who should have witnessed had already witnessed it. The great figures began to leave. With their status, they were destined to be cautious before making any decision. Even if Qin Yu's talent was unparalleled, they still wouldn't easily place a bet. Since they didn't want to be involved in the dispute of the Holy Monarch position too early, leaving now was the best choice. Otherwise, once Qin Yu came out, how would they express their stance? The Mu clan members were the first to leave. Just like when they arrived, they didn't alarm too many people. But there were still many eyes that fell on their departing figures. There were some things that no one said, but everyone knew in their hearts that the Mu family was currently very powerful. If they wanted to continue growing stronger, they could only face difficulties head-on. Therefore, this was an unsolvable problem. Both sides had never met before and had no grudges against each other. However, from today onwards, they were destined to be each other's greatest enemies until one side gave up or died. The demon envoy sucked in a deep breath. He didn't leave with the crowd. As one of the few people with the highest status in the Holy Palace, it was natural for him to care about a peerless white sun boundary proud son of heaven. However, the truth was that there was another worry in his heart that no one knew about. That was because the greatest explosive point of the day had yet to appear. And that was Qin Yu's demon body boundary. When they were at Heavenly Demon City, the demon attendant had found an excuse to go together with Yen Lu. Although they hadn't made any substantial contact, he could still feel Qin Yu's vigorous and potent blood energy fluctuations. Sovereign-level demon body. The reason the demon envoy was able to make such an accurate judgment was because he was an old sovereign-level existence and also had a calamity immortal realm cultivation. It wasn't difficult for him to figure out Qin Yu's background. His original plan was to suppress Qin Yu for a period of time. Thus, he reached an agreement with all parties to seal up the events that occurred in the Demon Ascension Gate's small world. But changes always came faster. Today, Qin Yu had amazed the world with a single brilliant feat without waiting for the demon envoy to suppress him. He had already soared into the highest heavens, drawing the attention of all parties. The White Sun Boundary's talent was terrifying, but the difficulty of cultivating the demon body was equally astonishing. If one wanted to have any achievements, they would need to spend a massive amount of time. But, what if others discovered that this White Sun Boundary disciple had already reached the sovereign-level demon body boundary before his talent was fully activated? The Mu family would be the first to go crazy. That's right, they would go crazy. This was because they no longer had enough time to patiently wait for the right time to hunt. The bloodline descendant of the previous Holy Monarch, even if he had lost half of his surname, still had an incomparably terrifying background and strength. Although he was the demon envoy of the Holy Palace, controlled half of the true demon guards, and was also a transcendent calamity immortal realm existence, he still didn't have absolute confidence that he could resist the crazy biting of the Mu family. But the demon envoy had no other choice. This world was fair. Qin Yu had obtained protection with his talent. While he had changed the standpoint of many people, he also had to bear these accompanying troubles. In the skies, the 10th sun gradually disappeared. The blue skies were once more intertwined with clouds and fog once more. The phenomenon ended. The final moment had finally arrived. The demon envoy had a calm expression, but his heart was already prepared to welcome any situation. Even if he had to shed all pretense of cordiality, even if he had to kill until the sun and moon lost all light, Even if he had to break the internal balance of the demonic path, he still had to protect Qin Yu. No matter the cost. In the skies above the pitch-black volcano crater, the only dark space suddenly trembled several times before splitting open. A figure stepped out. As if the light outside was too bright, he raised a hand in front of him and subconsciously narrowed his eyes. As he swept his eyes around, he could see open mouths and round eyes, making one worry that they would explode in the next moment. Qin Yu had a light expression. This was because he had already expected all of this, and now it seemed that the result was even better than he expected. He originally only wanted to maintain a high profile so that he could obtain the attention of the demonic path, but he never imagined that there would be such a great surprise. Although he had experienced pain that outsiders couldn't imagine, compared to his harvests, it wasn't anything at all. He faintly smiled. At this time, Qin Yu seemed to sense something. He looked up and his eyes met with the demon envoy's. It's him. Qin Yu subconsciously tensed up but soon composed himself. He bowed. The demon envoy was expressionless. He deeply looked at him for a moment and then turned to leave. At this time, his heart was like a sea, tumbling and tumbling. On that day at Dawn Perch residence, the two sides had sat across from each other. He had laid down his wine cup and made a final probe of Qin Yu. The demon envoy confirmed that he wasn't mistaken. That boundless blood vitality fluctuations and the tyrannical aura that came from the same source meant that this was without a doubt the sovereign-level demon body. But now, when Qin Yu emerged from the dark space, the demon envoy discovered that there were no longer any fluctuations of the demon body's blood vitality on his body. There were only two possibilities. Either his demon body had been crippled, or he had risen to an even higher level, surpassing the range of his senses. The 10th sun in the skies had just faded away. If the demon body was crippled, then there was only one option left. Sovereign level, even someone as powerful as the demon envoy couldn't help but groan in his mind. If he hadn't personally experienced it and seen it with his own eyes, he would have never believed it. But as he thought about Qin Yu's white sun boundary demon body talent, although all of this was astonishing, it could be explained. However, could cultivating the demon body at the white sun boundary really be so terrifying? The demon envoy didn't know. But there was one thing he was sure of, and that was that Qin Yu's chances of success had risen from 50 to at least 30%. This was because in the eyes of outsiders, Qin Yu was a junior with a heaven-defying talent who had yet to cross the threshold of the demon body. This would give others the misconception that they still had plenty of time and that they didn't need to take risks, that they could wait for the best opportunity. But the truth was that Qin Yu had already reached the sovereign level and was just a step away from the Saint Lord realm. As long as he could reach the saint level, there would be no one that could stop him from ascending to the heavens and becoming the peak existence in this vast world. Besides the demon envoy, there were three other people. As they looked at Qin Yu who walked out of the dark space, their minds blanked out. Although they had completed the test a long time ago, they had been in a constant state of shock. They simply didn't have the mind to observe their surroundings to determine just who this heaven-defying character was. Moreover, subconsciously, they didn't think that an old fellow that was several hundred years old could have such a performance. Gongzhen's lips were deathly pale and his body shivered. His entire mind was drowned in regret. If the heavens could give him a chance to start over, he swore he would hide as far away as he could and never provoke Qin Yu again. But what this world lacked the most was medicine for regret. The river of time surged forwards and wouldn't stop or shift because of anyone's will. Of course, this might only be the theory of relativity. But Gongzhen clearly wasn't someone with the qualifications to reverse time. So, he could only feel the fear and despair in his heart. His body stiffened. When Qin Yu's eyes fell on him, it was like he had been ruthlessly whipped. Gongzhen nearly jumped up from the ground, but in the next moment he lowered his head. The three of you, the bet between us has come to a conclusion. You won't go back on your word, right? 5 days had passed since the demon body test. The punishment that Qin Yu gave to Gong Zhen and the others was both merciful and cruel. He was merciful because the punishment was easy to complete, with almost no difficulty at all. He was cruel because ever since that day, Gong Zhen and the others had vanished from sight, never to appear again. Many demonic path cultivators subconsciously shivered as they thought of Qin Yu's methods. Even if some people wanted to hug his thigh, they wouldn't dare to have any thoughts about him. This was because Qin Yu's punishment was to run around naked for an hour. Yes, that was exactly what it meant. Even if there was a woman among them, Qin Yu remained as cold as iron, without the least bit of sympathy in his eyes. It wasn't that Gong Zhen and the others didn't think of refusing, but there were countless witnesses to the bet and Qin Yu's request didn't cross the bottom line. And more importantly, with Qin Yu's White Sun boundary talent, how could they dare to refuse? He obediently took off his clothes and ran for an hour. It was necessary to lose face, but perhaps he could write off what had happened before. If they tore apart all pretense of cordiality, even if Qin Yu couldn't do anything to them for the time being, what would happen in the future? No one wanted to be remembered by Qin Yu. Even Calamity Immortals had scruples in their hearts, much less 3 newly ascended demonic path disciples. Gong Zhen was the first to agree. He tore off his robes and ran away. Bao Yihan was the second. As the smiling woman ran away, her tears fell onto the white baby on her chest. She cried like a weeping beauty, pitiful and miserable. In the demonic path, there might be people who ran around naked, but it was rare for 2 men and 1 woman to run around together. Moreover, because of the commotion Qin Yu caused, this place had attracted far too much attention. It was only natural that more people saw this scene. It was unknown how many demonic path cultivators widened their eyes, their eyebrows dancing with joy. Were the new disciples of today already so good at playing around? The naked running incident was still fermenting, but Qin Yu no longer paid any attention to it. The reason he used such a vicious method was to establish his prestige. If anyone wanted to deal with him, they had to make preparations ahead of time. Now that his goal had been achieved, he naturally tossed it to the back of his mind. Now, what Qin Yu was thinking about was who would come out to contact him first. Through Zhao Qinyuan's explanation, he was already well aware of the matter of White Sun boundary talent. At the same time, he had also received a vague reminder from Zhao Qinyuan. Qin Yu thought about it. Zhao Qinyuan's words shouldn't be wrong. Most of the high-level figures of the demonic path were focused on him. 5 days should be enough time for the various influences within the demonic path to reach a certain degree of compromise. Dragon Head Mountain, within the grand residence at the summit, Qin Yu's eyes flashed, an inexplicable light in them. However, the person who came to contact him didn't appear. Instead, another guest arrived outside the residence. Looking at Sun Zifu who was welcomed in, Qin Yu's mind brightened. He lightly said, "Since you've come, sit down." Sun Zifu shook his head, an ashamed expression on his face. "I know that fellow Daoist Yao must be ridiculing me in your heart, but I am only one of the sons of the Sun family. Although I have some authority and status, I don't have the qualifications to make decisions for myself." He took out a storage ring. "The rewards that I promised fellow Daoist Yao are all inside. What's extra is the Sun family's apology. I hope fellow Daoist Yao can accept it." After speaking, Sun Zifu laid down the ring and walked away. After taking several steps, he stopped. Right now, many people are watching from the sidelines. The situation in the demonic path seems calm, but the truth is that there are turbulent waves within. Fellow Daoist Yao, you must be careful and think twice before you act. He had come and gone in a hurry. Compared to before, Sun Zifu seemed to have changed a little. Qin Yu's eyes flashed. He took the storage ring. Demon Body Tempering Pill. Qin Yu had heard of its name for a long time, but this was his first time seeing it. There were more than half the original amount. There were a total of 30 pills. The rest were all spirit stones. The Sun family didn't fail to live up to their reputation as the wealthiest family in the demonic path. Their wealth was astonishing. However, after 4 seasons City had used the pre-celestial wood to scheme against the immortal sect, Qin Yu had plenty of spirit stones in his hands. He glanced at them several times before putting them away, not caring too much about them. He took out a demon body tempering pill. Qin Yu focused his mind and didn't discover anything wrong with it. Then, he carefully scraped off some powder and swallowed it. After confirming that there was nothing wrong with it, he swallowed the entire pill. A moment later, Qin Yu opened his eyes. There was a bit more color in them. The demon body tempering pill was truly a good thing. It could actually directly increase the boundary of the demon body. Unfortunately, the emperor-level demon body was like a vast sea, and the strength of the demon body tempering pill was at most a small stream. To say that it was a drop in the bucket would be an exaggeration. It was most suitable for cultivators that had just started cultivating the demon body. It could allow them to achieve twice the results with half the effort and greatly increase their cultivation speed. Qin Yu shook his head. He looked at the remaining 29 pills and put them away. With his demon body's boundary, it was simply a waste to use pills to cultivate. However, Qin Yu couldn't blame the Sun family for their carelessness with their gifts. Moreover, they had already agreed to this beforehand. From what the outside world could see, he hadn't even crossed the threshold of demon body tempering pills yet, so giving them 30 demon body tempering pills was already more than enough. If there was a chance in the future, he would just trade them. 29 demon body tempering pills would have a high exchange value within the demonic path. The second day after Sun Zifu left, Qin Yu was finally able to wait. The first person to contact him wasn't some great figure, but their status wasn't low either. The left commander of the Holy Palace's True Demon Guard warmly said, "Fellow Daoist Yao Bin, I have come here on orders to inform you that from today onwards, you should pack your things and enter the Endless Sea to cultivate." Although he was calm and his tone was friendly, deep in his eyes there was confusion as well as a bit of sympathy. The Endless Sea, yes, that was indeed a good place to cultivate. But in the demonic path, there was no one willing to go there on their own initiative. With his White Sun boundary talent and the title of Holy Demon Sun, it was fine if he didn't succeed, but how did he end up being exiled? Left Commander Lu Shin couldn't figure this out. But, just like his name suggested, he was a cautious person. He wouldn't blindly inquire about things that he shouldn't know. He cupped his hands together and bid his farewells. As for the following matters, there would naturally be someone else to handle them. Soon, news spread throughout Dragon Head Mountain. The new disciples who had been silent out of fear, but also couldn't help but feel envious and jealous, let out long breaths of relief. Most of them were secretly delighted. Indeed, the rumors were true. This surname Yao's talent was unparalleled, but he was still viewed as a threat by others. Being exiled to the Endless Sea was the best proof of this. If this surname Yao knew he would end up like this, would he regret that his performance in the test was too dazzling? Chapter 531. The throne of the Holy Palace was empty and the main hall was completely sealed off. Unless a new holy monarch was born, no one could open it. Luckily, the demon attendant had his own inheritance. He was a subsidiary branch of the Holy Palace and could control a corner of the Holy Palace. Although it wasn't as grand and boundless as the main hall, it still had a vigorous aura that left one in awe. The surface of the dark hall was covered with countless shadow-like runes. They followed a specific rule, constantly swimming and weaving together. These shadow-like runes separated the entire hall from the outside world. No one was able to sense anything that occurred within. Thus, the demon attendant always liked to think about important matters here. This was because he was well aware of the current situation that the Holy Palace was facing. The slightest bit of carelessness could cause a massive shock. Of course, there was also another important reason. An old voice echoed out in the hall. Sending him into the endless sea may seem like exile on the surface, but that is actually the best choice right now. Otherwise, how long will you be able to defend him? This time, as long as we can buy enough time for him to grow up, we can consider ourselves to have won. The demon attendant respectfully said, "Teacher is right." If these words were heard by others, the entire demonic path would be shaken. This was because the demon attendant only had a single teacher, and that was the previous demon attendant. But according to the rules of the demonic path, the birth of a new demon attendant meant that the previous demon attendant had perished. This was something that had never been wrong in the demonic path for billions of years. But now, it was clear that some accident had occurred. The demon attendant hesitated for a moment. "I am only worried that Yao Bin will be disheartened by this matter. Once his spirit and will are damaged, it will be impossible for his demon body to make a breakthrough." The old voice was calm. "Although I haven't seen him with my own eyes, as you said, he is an extremely outstanding young junior. He has his own thoughts and wits. Moreover, he was able to become an emperor at such a young age. His lucky chances and destiny are not something that you and I can imagine. The best choice we can make for him is that he will have to rely on himself for his future path." The demon attendant hesitated and nodded. The previous demon attendant reminded, "Although the endless sea is a forbidden land, we still have to guard against it." The demon attendant respectfully said, "Teacher, rest assured that I have already made arrangements." The endless sea was located deep within the demonic path's small world. The seawater was blue and clear, and the gentle sea breeze blew against it, carrying with it the unique smell of seawater. On the fine and clean beach, a seagull with white feathers, red beaks, and black claws spread its wings and flew gracefully in the air. Under the illumination of the 9 suns, the surface of the sea shimmered with light. It was a beautiful sight to behold. Just from the environment alone, this place could be considered beautiful and captivating. But in reality, this beautiful sea area was a burial ground. Since the sacred palace had existed since then, apart from the historical records of the missing sacred lord of the origin, all the sacred lords of the past had been buried here after they ascended to heaven. There were also many important figures of the sacred palace buried with the sacred tomb. Without permission, no one was allowed to approach the endless sea. Otherwise, it would be regarded as a great disrespect to the previous holy monarchs. No one could afford to bear such a crime. Thus, the speed car that sent Qin Yu off came to a stop in the distance. Everyone got off and respectfully bowed towards the sea. Qin Yu stood in the middle of everyone. He straightened his body and looked at the endless sea. His eyes flashed, revealing a bit of understanding. It seemed that in this internal struggle of the demonic path, the compromise was to protect their own people for the time being. Otherwise, he wouldn't be facing such a leisurely scene right now. As Qin Yu thought about the message that Zhao Qianyuan had sent him, he sighed inwardly. During the demon body talent test, he had caused an unexpected stir, but he had also fallen into a great deal of trouble. But he didn't regret it. Even if he had to do it all over again, he would still make the same choice. Moreover, this wasn't something that he could control to begin with. "Fellow Daoist Yao Bin, we can only send you here." A true demon guard cupped his hands together and took out a jade box. Inside is the Holy Nether Guard Commander token and your appointment document. It will take effect immediately after you enter the endless sea. Please accept it. The Sacred Palace had always had 2 great armed forces. The True Demon Guard was one and the Holy Nether Guard was the other. To a certain degree, the Holy Nether Guard was even stronger than the true Demon Guard. But that was only the situation recorded in the ancient texts. Ever since the previous Holy Monarch ascended to heaven, the throne had been vacant for over 100,000 years. The Holy Nether Guard had retreated to the Endless Sea, unable to leave without a Holy Spirit. In these long 100,000 years, the last powerful Holy Nether Guard had long since died. Now, there were only a few cats left. Moreover, as long as a new Holy Monarch didn't appear, the Holy Nether Guard could not leave the Endless Sea. Thus, being appointed as the commander of the Holy Nether Guard was a rather sad thing. Qin Yu could sense the pity and confusion in the guard's eyes. He calmly received the wooden box, nodded, and turned to leave. If he had been exiled to the Endless Sea before the demon body test, Qin Yu would have been extremely disappointed. He might have thought of all sorts of methods to escape from here. But now, all he had in his heart was calm. The Emperor level was only a step away from the Saint level. Once he smoothly stepped over it, Qin Yu could directly enter the sacred palace. Even the phrase reaching the heavens in a single bound wasn't enough to describe this. The reason he had displayed such a high profile was to obtain the attention of the great figures of the demonic path and use the massive cultivation resources of the demonic path to become stronger as soon as possible, becoming a truly influential figure. But now, Qin Yu had an even better choice. As long as his demon body broke into the saint level and he became the master of the sacred palace, he would instantly become one of the most honored people in the world. Why would he give up what was near and seek what was far away? Entering the Endless Sea might seem like he was being exiled, but he could actually obtain a stable environment where he could wholeheartedly cultivate. To Qin Yu, there were only advantages and no disadvantages. As for those mocking and sympathetic gazes, he didn't care what others thought, and time would prove everything. Looking at Qin Yu's back as he walked towards the Endless Sea, his steps calm and steady, his shoulders as steady as mountains, and thinking about how calm and indifferent he had been the entire time, the true demon guards responsible for delivering the box all revealed looks of admiration. Not to mention anything else, just this breadth of mind and bearing wasn't something they could compare with. He was truly worthy of being a formidable character with the demon body's white sun boundary talent. The true demon guard that delivered the wooden box took a deep breath and suppressed his heart. He said in a low voice, "The mission has been completed. Let's go." Everyone boarded the speed car. With a low engine sound, they rapidly flew back the way they came, soon vanishing from sight. Thus, in this boundless world, looking all around, there was only Qin Yu's figure. Beneath the illumination of the 9 suns above his head, he silently walked forwards. His pace wasn't fast, but it was filled with firmness. Step by step, he arrived at the Endless Sea. As far as the eye could see, the waves, the sea breeze, the seagulls, and the white sandy beach beneath his feet formed a beautiful picture. Qin Yu's lips curved up, revealing a faint smile. It wasn't just because of the beautiful scenery in front of him, but also because of the extremely rich heaven and earth spiritual strength that surrounded him. Indeed, as Xiao Qinyuan had said, although the Endless Sea was a land of exiles, it was also the most suitable place to cultivate within the demonic path. If it weren't for the fact that one needed to join the Holy Nether Guard and couldn't take a single step without a Holy Nether Guard token, then the spots to enter would have already been fought over. Qin Yu took out the token that represented the commander of the Holy Nether Guard. As he entered the Endless Sea, this token began to emit light, indicating that the appointment had taken effect. But the beach was empty, without a single person to be seen. There were only several broken wooden boats that were chained to the pier, bobbing up and down with the waves. It seemed as if no one placed him in their eyes as a commander. Qin Yu shook his head. He walked over to the first wooden boat and looked down. The bottom of the boat was broken. He took several more steps forward and looked at the second boat. It was also broken. The third boat, the fourth boat, and then, well, if one included the pieces of wood chained to the ground, there were a total of 5 boats. They have a great amount of resentment. Chinyu whispered to himself, but there wasn't much dissatisfaction on his face. They had a powerful cultivation, but they were trapped in a cemetery, dying in a depressed and unwilling state. After witnessing the fates of their ancestors, it was normal for the Holy Nether Guard to feel resentment in their hearts. On the other hand, if Chinyu had come today and immediately received a warm welcome, he would have secretly wondered if these people were preparing to kill him to vent their anger. The wooden boats were all broken. Fine, that was nonsense. Then, he might as well do something practical and repair it. The endless sea was a sea, but it wasn't just a sea. If Chinyu wanted to truly enter it, he needed a key. These wooden boats were the key. He dismantled 3 wooden boats and nailed the planks together, barely managing to piece together a boat. Although it looked a bit ugly, it should be enough. Chinyu stepped onto it. With a flick of his sleeves, the pieced-together wooden boat sailed deep into the endless sea. The wooden boat broke through the waves, emitting loud crashing sounds. Standing on the shore, after several breaths of time, the wooden boat had vanished from sight. At the bow of the boat, Chinyu suddenly felt something. He looked back and saw that the shore had indeed disappeared. He was in the boundless sea, unable to see the end of it. The endless sea. Entering the sea was boundless, taking in the endless meaning of the world. Mottled runes began to appear on the wooden boat beneath him. Perhaps it was because it was broken and incomplete, but the runes on the surface of the boat were intermittent. It gave off a very unreliable feeling. Chinyu looked down and subconsciously frowned. If he couldn't open the entrance to this boat, wouldn't that be troublesome for him? Thinking about it even more darkly, if those holy nether guards who inherited their father's legacy pretended not to know, just as Chinyu thought he should do something, the wooden boat suddenly trembled. Then, the water in front of him was parted by an invisible strength, revealing a waterway that led straight to the seabed. The wooden boat swooped down. Chinyu relaxed a little. It seemed that although these people resented him, they didn't dare to do anything too extreme. But less than a breath of time after this thought appeared, he discovered that he had been too optimistic. Bang! The high walls of water on both sides suddenly broke apart. 2 large fish rushed out, blue spikes jutting out from their mouths. Although he didn't know how strong these spikes were, he could see that they shined with a metallic halo on their surface. If they pierced his body, it definitely wouldn't feel good. From these 2 large fish, Chinyu could feel the aura of someone controlling them. Although these soul fluctuations were weak, they couldn't escape the senses of the cosmic sea-cross bell. Mimi mercilessly mocked, "Chinyu, you really do have a halo of hatred around you. No matter where you go, there will always be people who find you unpleasant to the eye. Smelly brat, did you forget who it was that went to such great lengths to find food for you? To burn the bridge after crossing the river, this move was quite easy to play." Of course, mocking him was one thing, but she still had to make a move. Mimi considered herself a person with principles. Chinyu's humanoid food detector was quite useful. The cosmic sea-cross bell lightly trembled. An invisible impact spread out, instantly shattering the soul control placed on the 2 large fish. The ferocious-looking fish came to a sudden stop. They looked around and were immediately frightened. They glanced at each other, as if saying, "What the fuck, why are we here?" They turned around and tore through the water walls, fleeing without a trace. Deep within the endless sea, there was a large city. The city was strict, and a harsh killing aura soared into the heavens. At this time, in a large residence somewhere in the city, a group of young cultivators were gathered together. There were both men and women, and all of them had excited expressions. But at this time, no one spoke. Even their breathing slowed down for fear that they would disturb the woman sitting cross-legged in the center. She wore a long blue dress and her features were picturesque. Although she was clearly sitting here, she gave off a feeling as if she were one with the heavens and earth. No, she wasn't one with the heavens and earth. Rather, it was more accurate to say that this endless and beautiful sea was imprisoning them. Suddenly, the female cultivator trembled. She opened her eyes and blood flowed out from the corners of her lips. The excited young men and women were all stunned at the same time. Then, they revealed expressions of shock. They had never thought that this would be the result. In front of the crowd, a young man stepped forwards. He was of medium stature but his aura was extremely strong. He frowned, causing one to feel a stabbing pain in their eyes. They hurriedly looked away. Lon Lon, what happened? His voice was low and deep, containing a calmness that didn't match his youth. It made one feel uneasy. The slightly panicked crowd immediately quieted down. Hai Lon Lon lowered her head, deep in thought. After several breaths of time, she said, "The person who came has a high soul cultivation. He almost instantly discovered me and then tried to break the control." She lifted a hand and wiped the blood from the corners of her lips. "It was just a slight shock to my soul. There's no problem. I want to try again." As she spoke to hear, her eyes brightened. But in the end, Hai Lon Lon didn't have a chance to attack again. Several dignified middle-aged men pushed open the door and walked in. What nonsense! The reprimand was harsh. But the several middle-aged men felt a bit helpless. Unless they truly wanted to shed all pretense of cordiality, they could let this happen once, but they couldn't allow these juniors to attack a second time. The Holy Nether Guard guarding the Endless Sea was an iron law set down by the Holy Palace when it was first established. This rule was engraved deep into their bloodlines and could not be changed. This was their destiny from birth. They could harbor discontent in their hearts, but they absolutely could not rebel. Otherwise, none of them would be able to withstand the consequences. If it weren't for this, how could the once illustrious Holy Nether Guard be willing to spend 100,000 years after the Holy Monarch passed away, living in anger, despair, and unwillingness until the day of their death? All of you are to be confined. Without my permission, no one is allowed to leave. Hai Lon Lon, Liang Shi, and the others respectfully bowed and left. The Holy Land has ignored us for 100,000 years, and now they've suddenly sent a Lord Commander. What do you think of this? Wait a moment. The result will naturally be known. Humph. He had best recognize reality. If he really thinks of himself as a commander and makes some outrageous request, I won't be polite. Chapter 532. After the large fish attacked, the waterway was smooth. This was a bit unexpected. It seemed that the Holy Nether Guard didn't dare to go too far. Qin Yu smiled, his eyes flashing. It was unknown what he was thinking. After around a quarter hour, the patchwork wooden ship came to a stop. What appeared in front of Qin Yu was a city filled with soaring infernal energy. But what was different from the sea race capital city that Qin Yu had visited in the past was that this city wasn't built at the bottom of the sea. Rather, it was suspended in the depths of the endless sea, supported by seawater. A great floating city. Qin Yu revealed a look of praise. To build such a city in the unpredictable deep sea, the difficulty could be imagined. Moreover, what left him even more gratified was the awe-inspiring atmosphere that the entire city exuded. Even though they had been trapped in the endless sea for 100,000 years and countless people had died unwillingly, the Holy Nether Guard was still able to maintain this momentum. The reputation of the Holy Nether Guard was truly well-deserved. The Emperor-level demon body was only a step away from the Saint level. This was something that made one's heart surge with excitement. But even if Qin Yu successfully broke through to become a Saint Lord, he had no foundation in the demonic path, nor did he have any trusted aides. How much authority could he have as a saint lord? It was nothing more than a pleasing name and a dignified appearance. But this wasn't what Qin Yu wanted. Thus, he had to possess his own strength in the demonic path. Being exiled to the Endless Sea and becoming a commander of the Holy Nether Guard was the best choice he could make. If he could subdue the Holy Nether Guard. Qin Yu's heart skipped a beat before he composed himself. It was too early to consider these things. He had to walk this road step by step. At this time, the city gates opened from within. A massive number of Holy Nether Guards that were covered in armor similar to the true demon guards rushed out. The only difference was that their armor was bright red, as if it had been soaked in endless blood. A thick killing intent quietly spread out in all directions. In the distance, large numbers of fish were startled and fled, stirring up white splashes in the water. There were 4 figures in the lead. Some were tall, some were short, but each of them had an aura as condensed as a mountain. Their broad shoulders seemed as if they could lift up the moon and stars. Their eyes were ice cold and they shot forwards like arrows. Qin Yu's expression was calm. It was like what he was standing on wasn't a shabby wooden ship, but a supreme throne of power. His eyes were light. As he looked at the 4 people, a calm and unruffled aura poured out from him. There was silence, and the atmosphere suddenly became heavy. A formless pressure made it difficult for everyone to breathe. But the silence was finally broken. In the second left position, a blood-armored man who wasn't the tallest nor the shortest cupped his hands together. Holy Nether Guard Vice Commander Fu Shan greets the Lord Commander. The 3 people beside him and the many Holy Nether Guards behind them all bowed in unison. The scales on their armor began to crackle, as if great waves were rising from the seabed. Then, the already astonishing killing intent suddenly soared, reaching a level that caused one's mind to tremble. In a trance, it was as if the big city floating at the bottom of the sea had turned into a horrifying beast that was imprisoned. It opened its mouth and roared at the sky. Qin Yu's eyes paused for a moment before he revealed a smile. Although it wasn't too bright, it gave off a warm feeling of spring. As this infernal energy and killing intent rose up, many people across from him were stunned. They secretly thought that this boy had some skill. Thank you, Vice Commander and everyone, for waiting here for so long. I am truly sorry. Fu Shan stood up, his aura calm and unchanging. Lord Commander speaks too seriously. This is what we subordinates should do. Qin Yu smiled and nodded. Everyone greets me. Behind Fu Shan, the 3 garrison generals furrowed their eyebrows. Why hadn't they mentioned a single word of what happened just now? Had they decided to temporarily endure it, or did they have other plans? A person suddenly stepped forwards. This subordinate is 1st Garrison General Yuan Zhen. If I may be so bold as to ask Lord Commander, the Holy Palace has ignored us for 100,000 years. For them to suddenly send a commander here today, what instructions do they have? These words weren't polite, but it was a strategy they had already discussed. Since the new commander was shrouded in fog, they would take the initiative to attack. Of course, they had already prepared a follow-up response. No matter how the new commander responded, they would be able to control the situation. As for why they were so confident, it was simple. This was the Endless Sea, the place where their ancestors had lived and operated. Although they couldn't free themselves from their own destiny, a new commander couldn't shake or change anything. Qin Yu's smile didn't change. He shook his head. To tell the truth, I have no idea why I came here or why I became the commander of the Holy Nether Guard. This was the truth, so he spoke calmly. So, Garrison General Yuan Zhen's question, I really cannot answer it. Thinking about it, it's best to continue as before. Yuan Zhen was clearly stunned. It was clear that they had made all sorts of plans and made all sorts of preparations to be tough or soft, but they never imagined this would be the result. Based on what he said, it seemed like this new commander had been banished here. But as soon as this thought appeared, he suppressed it. He thought that he had almost been fooled. If he really was an exiled person, then he could have just sent him to join the Holy Nether Guard and his life would have been ruined. Why would he superfluously give him the position of Holy Nether Guard commander? This person didn't reveal anything at all. Just like Yuan Zhen, Fu Shan and the other two garrison generals frowned, a dignified look in their eyes. This person was truly worthy of being a chess piece of the Holy Palace. Although he looked young, his methods were fierce. Although he appeared calm and gentle, the truth was that he wasn't easy to deal with. Without giving them time to think, Qin Yu rubbed his temples. "I'm a bit tired. I'll go rest today. If there's anything else, let's talk about it later." Fu Shan nodded. "I'll send you off to rest." Qin Yu waved his hand. "There's no need. Everyone has many matters to attend to, so just find someone to lead the way." Seeing that Qin Yu didn't want to speak too much, Fu Shan called over an assistant. After giving a few orders, the assistant bowed and said, "Commander, please follow me." Although he bowed, his voice was cold, without the least bit of respect. Qin Yu nodded without a care. The Holy Nether Guard was filled with deep grievances. He had to find a way to ease their relationship before he could consider winning them over. In this current situation, if Qin Yu were to display an attitude of wanting to be friends with everyone, he feared they would instantly be filled with dread. Everything in the world followed the same principle. Haste makes waste. Like this, Qin Yu followed behind this Holy Nether Guard. Under the watchful eyes of countless people, he slowly entered the floating city. Yuan Zhen licked his lips. "Commander, this person has hidden himself quite deeply." That's right, in the eyes of all the Holy Nether Guards, Fu Shan was their only commander. As for this newcomer, if he really wanted to use a chicken feather as a token of authority, he would be beaten black and blue in the blink of an eye. Fu Shan's eyebrows relaxed. No matter how it is said, he is the commander of the Holy Nether Guard appointed by the Holy Palace. Be careful when you do things and don't let him grab hold of your weakness. Otherwise, even if you can withstand it, it won't be good if things become too tense. Yuan Zhen hesitated. Then what happens next? Before he finished speaking, everyone already knew what he was talking about. Fu Shan lightly said, "Did we arrange for the Lord Commander's official residence?" Yuan Zhen's eyes brightened. He smiled. "Of course. Since the Lord Commander has arrived, we certainly wouldn't dare to neglect him. However, the Holy Nether Guard is trapped in the Endless Sea and is incomparably barren. In addition, the position of commander has been empty for many years, so the residence is a bit dilapidated and uninhabited. This is understandable." Fu Shan turned and walked away. He wanted to know just what sort of reaction this new young Lord Commander would have. A sharp light flashed in his eyes. This was because this reaction would provide him with an extremely important basis for his judgment. Just why had this new Lord Commander come? Holy Nether City was extremely large. After 100,000 years, it was more than enough time for a massive tribe to multiply. Thus, after Qin Yu entered the city and boarded the carriage, he saw many people along the way. There were no flying carriages here. Rather, they maintained the crude and primitive method of using powerful alien life forms as the driving force. For instance, the carriage Qin Yu was riding in right now was being pulled by 2 flood dragons. Unfortunately, such a dignified carriage wasn't able to win him the least bit of respect or awe. In fact, there was even more indifference and hostility mixed in with curiosity. The one responsible for driving the flood dragons was the Holy Nether Guard that led the way. This person wasn't tall or burly, but rather thin. After boarding the carriage, he didn't say a single word. A cold chill rose up from his body, and it was clear he didn't have any thoughts of flattering the new Lord Commander behind him. The flood dragons soared through the clouds at an extremely fast speed. Thus, when the carriage came to a stop, not too much time had passed. Qin Yu stepped down from the carriage and looked at the majestic atmosphere in front of him. This building was constructed from some sort of black skull from the seabed, and his lips twitched. It seemed that the degree of his unpopularity would continue to rise. Dilapidated, this word wasn't enough to describe Qin Yu's first impression. Rather, it was more accurate to call it ruins. The massive gate seemed to have experienced the chaos of war. Large pieces of black stone that had been glued together had been shattered by a tyrannical strength, faintly discernible in the weeds on the ground. Half of the gate was missing, and the remaining part was rotten beyond repair. It had long since been unable to serve as a shelter. Looking through the collapsed giant screen wall, one could see a lake that was nearly submerged in vegetation. The occasional exposed surface of the lake was covered in dark green algae. Qin Yu nearly laughed in anger. Did these holy nether guards really think that he wouldn't be angry? But thinking about it, perhaps they were waiting for him to be angry. Thus, after thinking about it several times, his complexion returned to normal. Although his entire face was hidden behind a hideous blood-red mask, the surprise and disappointment in the holy nether guard's eyes couldn't escape Qin Yu's eyes. He thought to himself that this was indeed the case, and his expression became even calmer. Go back and tell Fu Shan that this place is very unique. He's very considerate. As the icy-cold holy nether guard heard this, he revealed a nervous expression for the first time. He couldn't discern anything from Qin Yu's expression, and he couldn't help but feel annoyed and disappointed. He cupped his hands across his chest and hurried away. Qin Yu reached out a hand and pushed against the miserable half of the gate. He watched helplessly as it crashed to the ground, smashing to pieces and filling the air with ash. Even though he was already mentally prepared, his lips still twitched. As he walked through the ruined courtyard, he could still feel the majestic background that hadn't been completely washed away by time. He could imagine just how lively and bustling this place must have been many years ago. Unfortunately, imagination was an illusion. If Qin Yu wanted to live here, he would have to do it himself. No matter what, he had to find a place to stay. After searching for a long time, he finally found a stone chamber near the rockery. This should have been a place used for seclusion. The materials used were extremely meticulous, and even though the array formation protecting it had long since been destroyed, it was still mostly intact. After cleaning it up, he took out an illumination bead from his storage ring. Qin Yu looked around and nodded. The environment wasn't too bad. At the very least, from the entrance, this messy courtyard still had a bit of beauty to it. People had to have an optimistic attitude that could find joy in sorrow. Only then would they be able to live comfortably. Moreover, there was an old saying that if he wanted to order others around, he had to at least let them vent their anger. Demonic Path Holy Land Small World, Mu Family. As a descendant of the previous Holy Lord, even after losing half of their surname, they were still one of the top family influences of the demonic path. Cloud Grove City was the Mu family's fiefdom. It was managed so well that not even a drop of water could leak out. There were countless powerhouses under their command, and their influence was awe-inspiring. Today, in a courtyard in the city, a gray-robed Mu Xianglin was sitting on a stone bench, his aura cold and harsh. The space around him was filled with cryptic fluctuations. The power of an array formation isolated all auras from the outside world. Yaobin must die, even if he has been exiled to the endless sea. His tone was calm and light, as if he were talking about what to eat for dinner. Mu Xianglin nodded with satisfaction. Mo, for you to think like this proves that you haven't been blinded by your achievements. The blue-robed youth across from him smiled, his temperament as warm as water. White Sun Boundary Talent. His eyes were filled with praise and envy. If I underestimated him, wouldn't that be far too stupid? He stood up and cupped his hands together. Uncle, I'll have to trouble you with this matter. Mu Xianglin lightly said, I won't give him the chance to leave the endless sea. With a White Sun Boundary Talent, he already has the qualifications to be buried in the endless sea. Uncle will send him on his way. Mu Mo turned and left, his eyes cold and indifferent. The position of Holy Lord was his. He absolutely couldn't allow any accidents to occur. Anyone who dared to stop him would die. To the surprise of the Holy Nether Guard, Qin Yu didn't move at all. He lived in that ruined courtyard, like a transparent person. Nothing in Holy Nether City had changed at all. Of course, even if they didn't sense anything wrong from Qin Yu, Fu Shan and the others still didn't dare to be careless. They never stopped monitoring him. Moreover, this monitoring wasn't done in a secretive manner. Rather, it was done openly, clearly conveying a message of distrust and wariness. Thus, besides the Holy Nether Guards that walked back and forth, Qin Yu would often rest in a large abandoned garden at the back of the courtyard. From afar, he would often see a woman with a cold temperament, as if she were one with the surrounding sea. Although she was beautiful, her eyes were far too cold. They were like two translucent blades of ice that stabbed into the deepest depths of one's heart, causing a chill to crawl up one's back. Luckily, this woman only watched from afar without any intention of approaching. She also never disturbed Qin Yu. Every day, she would quietly look at him for a period of time before turning and leaving. Occasionally, a young man with thorns all over his body would appear. The two of them would whisper something to each other. The young man seemed to be trying to persuade her, but it was clear that he didn't succeed. Thus, when he looked at Qin Yu, his eyes became even colder. This was truly an undeserved calamity. Qin Yu curled his lips. He thought that he wasn't the one who asked her to come. If she could let her go, then he would be more than happy. If he could, he really wanted to say, young man, if you want to pursue a girl, you can't lack a certain toughness. If you're so weak right now, even if you manage to catch up to her in the future, you probably won't have any status in the future. He opened his eyes and glanced towards that direction. Indeed, the woman that came every day had come again. Qin Yu was already used to this and didn't care about her icy cold eyes. He leaned back and leaned against a stone tablet that he didn't know what it was made of. This stone tablet was tilted at an angle, so it was very comfortable to lean against. Closing his eyes, Zhang Xian was resting contentedly when his eyebrows suddenly shot up. When he opened his eyes, he saw a cold and beautiful face. Two thin lips were lightly touching, and a voice that was pleasant to the ears but cold enough to make one shiver. Do you know what kind of stone tablet this is? Without waiting for Qin Yu to reply, Hai Lanlan turned and walked away. Her tall and slender back exuded an angry and sorrowful aura. Qin Yu frowned. He stood up and turned around. Looking at the gray and unremarkable stone tablet that was stuck into the ground, he thought for a moment and then began to clean it up. A moment later, Qin Yu stood in front of the stone tablet. He stared at it for a long time and then gently sighed. He looked in the direction that Shui Lanlan had disappeared in and then turned to leave. On the second day, Hai Lanlan didn't appear. The third day was a repeat of the second day. After that, he didn't see that cold figure again for a long time. Qin Yu faintly guessed what was going on. He couldn't help but feel a bit guilty, but he soon suppressed it. His time was precious and he naturally wouldn't waste it on useless negative emotions that would affect his cultivation. Water flows have sound, water flows have quality, perseverance, reversal, softness, hardness. As he whispered to himself, Qin Yu lifted a hand. His 5 fingers constantly brushed the air, as if he could feel some invisible existence. Chapter 533. Qin Yu didn't fully understand just how powerful the Emperor-level demon body was. This was because after he borrowed the demon blood crystal to make his breakthrough, his mortal body had been undergoing some sort of evolutionary transformation. But he could clearly feel every inch of his flesh, blood, muscles, and bones constantly increasing in strength. Qin Yu's demon body started out at the general level and then he broke into the Golden Core realm. After that, every boundary would rise accordingly. The martial level corresponded to nascent soul, the king level corresponded to divine soul, and the emperor level corresponded to blue sea. Then, the realm that the emperor level corresponded to should be the calamity immortal realm. The demon body was the foundation of countless great supernatural powers of the demonic path, but in essence it was the strongest body transformation method of the demonic path. Qin Yu didn't know just how terrifying the bodily strength of the emperor-level demon body was, but he knew that it was enough to suppress all blue seas. Moreover, the demon body also had a terrifying effect on increasing one's combat strength. Once his mortal body completely transformed and his emperor-level demon body was consolidated, Qin Yu's strength would inevitably rise once more. He was well aware of all of this, but this wasn't a reason for him to relax. Just how vast was the land of divinity and demons? The proud elites of heaven were as numerous as the endless sea of stars. Disregarding everything else, just meeting Zhao Qianyuan alone was enough for Qin Yu to be cautious. Thinking about it, even when he was in the Demon Ascension Gate's small world and faced the resurrected monster race Great Emperor, Zhao Qianyuan hadn't used his full strength. He had immediately retreated as soon as he sensed something was wrong. Qin Yu had an intuition that he was hiding something. Even what he saw today was only the part he was willing to expose. The stronger he became, the more he could feel the invisible pressure coming from Zhao Qianyuan. With such a character by his side, how could Qin Yu dare to be careless? In the past, when he was a little disciple of the Eastern Mountain sect in the land of exiles, after he obtained the little blue lamp, he stepped onto a great Tao of cultivation that was far beyond his expectations. Although there were countless dangers along the way and he had fallen into countless hopeless situations on the verge of death, Qin Yu's eyes still widened as he experienced just how vast and boundless the world was. Now, he was only a single step away from the peak of the world. Moreover, he had all sorts of lucky chances and good fortune, and he had many cards in his hands. All of this gave Qin Yu enough confidence to look up at the unsurpassed starry skies and decide to become the most dazzling one. His demon body broke through the Emperor realm and he was just a step away from the Saint Lord realm. Qin Yu's mind had finally undergone a thorough transformation. He was still filled with enmity towards the immortal sect, but he had already regarded this matter as a tempering in his climb to the highest great Tao, and not his ultimate goal. Although the process hadn't changed, the meaning it represented was completely different. Now, Qin Yu had the boldness to embrace the heavens and earth. Since he had the heart to ascend to the heavens, he naturally had to put in more effort than ordinary people. Otherwise, even if he had a good hand of cards, he would only be beaten to a pulp in the end. As Qin Yu's mind and will were transforming and he was diligently cultivating to attack the future, there was actually someone who was in a daze. He didn't know how, but for some unknown reason, he was struck by a stroke of bad luck. The unlucky one was a squad leader of the true Devil Guards. His name was Wang Chao, and he had implicated his two sworn brothers who had always followed his lead. Looking at the cold face of the manager of the Ministry of Justice, Wang Chao was bewildered. He hadn't pulled himself together yet. He had just gone out for a drink, and at most, he had found some girls after drinking. Moreover, he wasn't on duty. This kind of thing that everyone had agreed on privately, how could he be robbed of his position and banished to the endless sea? What are you doing here? The order has already been given. Do you want to disobey it? The manager of the Ministry of Justice's voice was harsh, but there was a bit of regret deep in his eyes. He didn't know who Wang Chao had offended, but since this was an order from above, he didn't dare to refuse. His lips moved before he finally sighed. Wang Chao was familiar with the internal affairs of the true demon guards. He knew that since things had reached this step, there was no way to reverse it. He handed over his identity token and took off the true demon guard armor. Wang Chao's eyes turned red as he bowed and left. Then, outside the Ministry of Justice's courtyard, he saw his two brothers who had suffered the same fate. The three of them exchanged several words before falling silent. Wang Chao's voice was bitter. "Second brother, third brother, I'm really sorry. It was Big Brother who implicated you." Huayanting forced a smile. "Big Brother, what are you saying? Yesterday, the three of us went out together. Now that we've been plotted against, it's our bad luck. How can we blame you?" "Third brother is right," Yellow Mountain said in a low voice. "You and I already said that we would endure thick and thin together. So what if we were banished to the endless sea? As long as we're together, anything is possible." Huayanting hurried to say, That's right, that's right. Don't forget that the one with the White Sun Realm cultivation base is in the endless sea. We can seize this chance to hug his thigh. Perhaps one day, we will come back to kill him." These words were just to comfort themselves. The endless sea was a tomb of the living dead. If they were banished there, if their spirit and willpower weren't strong enough, their lives would be over. They didn't know what Yao Bin's current appearance was, and they wanted to join him. "Stop dreaming." Wang Chao's face stiffened. He suddenly remembered that when he was in the heavenly demon city, he had accidentally seen the demon servant and Yan Lu, the two masters, entering the Sunglow perching residence. Thinking about the sudden incident today, although the manager of the Ministry of Justice was cold, he still had a little bit of pity in his eyes. He suddenly had an idea. Could it be, although he wasn't sure, it was at least a possibility. If it was true, being sent to the endless sea wasn't just a banishment, but a chance that many people could only dream of. As soon as he thought of this, his heart relaxed. He felt that his bleak future had become much brighter, and his body was filled with strength. His thoughts turned. He remembered that the three of them would be sent to the endless sea as punishment. In order to avoid any resentment between the brothers, it was best to tell them his guess. After all, going out yesterday was most likely his suggestion. Although he was confident in their friendship, why would he use this matter to test their brotherhood? Wang Chao coughed. "Second brother, third brother, come closer." A moment later, Huayanting and Huang Shan's eyes brightened. Although they found it hard to believe, they had known Wang Chao for many years. They believed in his character and that he wouldn't lie. The road has turned around. In the Ministry of Justice's courtyard, some people already knew the final result of the punishment. As they looked at the three people outside, their eyes were filled with pity. It had to be known that the true demon guard spots were extremely popular within the demonic path. It was unknown how much effort and luck these three people had put in to be selected. But now, it had all come to nothing. Not only had they lost their future and status, but they had also been exiled to the endless sea. They feared that they would never be able to leave again in this life. This was simply heart-wrenching. It was even more painful than being drenched in blood. But soon, a puzzling scene occurred. It was unknown what the three depressed people whispered to each other, but they suddenly became spirited and their eyes shined. They even laughed, their voices filled with excitement. This was madness. Looking at the backs of Wang Chao's group of three leaving, the demonic path cultivators in the Ministry of Justice revealed looks of pity. They really couldn't withstand such a heavy blow. In the blink of an eye, these three people had turned into idiots, as if their brains had been damaged. Soon, news of Wang Chao, Huayanting, and Huang Shan losing their minds and being sent to the endless sea as punishment quickly spread throughout the true demon guard circle and even to the outside world. And at this time, the three nervous and excited people had already boarded a speedcar heading towards the endless sea. The true demon guard squad responsible for escorting them was an old friend of Wang Chao's group. The squad captain said some comforting words. Seeing Wang Chao's natural response, he didn't believe the rumors. But after carefully observing them, he discovered that there was a hint of anticipation in their eyes. He couldn't help but sigh inwardly. He winked at his subordinates, indicating for them to be careful. When the squad captain returned, the rumors of the three people losing their minds became even louder. It evolved into a version where the three of them were immersed in their inner world. Although they appeared normal on the surface, they had actually gone completely insane. This caused others to sigh with emotion. Of course, these things had nothing to do with the three people who had entered the endless sea. They were walking forward without hesitation, clinging on to the only tie that could save their lives. Thus, in Qin Yu's ruined residence, three guests were welcomed for the first time. Wang Chao, Hua Yanting, Huang Shan. The three people fell to their knees. Greetings, Commander. This was the first time that Qin Yu felt the dignity of the Holy Nether Guard commander. Although he didn't care too much about it, he still felt happy. Why did you come here? Qin Yu had the three of them stand up. With just a few words, the three men's eyes turned red. Of course, most of these emotions were feigned. But if they didn't do this, how could the commander feel compassion for them and accept them as his subordinates? This was all a prearranged plot. After recounting their tragic experiences, Wang Chao fell to his knees once more. Us three brothers have nowhere to go. I hope that commander can take us in. In the future, we will go through fire and water without hesitation. Hua Yanting and Huang Shan followed suit. They lowered their heads, nervousness in their eyes. Qin Yu had a helpless expression. After entering the endless sea, I can't even protect myself, so how can I take you in? The three of you seem to have come to the wrong place. Wang Chao's heart tightened, but he didn't panic too much. Yao Bin knew that someone was targeting him. If he didn't even have this much caution, then he would have to seriously consider whether or not his decision was wrong. Commander, we sincerely pledge our allegiance to you and we don't dare to have any ill intentions. We only hope that one day you can rise up and take us away from here. He paused for a moment. Commander's residence is very large. Can we live far away? You can observe us and make your decision later. Qin Yu's eyes flashed. He lightly said, this place has already become ruins. If you want to live here, then tidy up yourselves. I won't accompany you any longer. He turned and left. Wang Chao hurriedly bowed. Farewell, Lord Commander. Rising up, the three of them glanced at each other. They could all see the excitement in each other's hearts. The facts were clear. After Yao Bin entered the endless sea, he hadn't given up on himself because his mind had been wounded. The more cautious he was, the more it proved that he had ambitions in his heart. This just happened to be what they wanted. At this time, the three of them finally felt a bit more at ease. The reason they were so excited and happy before was because they were trying to cheer themselves up. It was a kind of psychological hint to each other. Wang Chao took a deep breath. All right, let's go to the front yard and find a place to live. Whether or not we can pass the test will depend on our performance. Hua Yanting and Yellow Mountain earnestly nodded. In the abandoned commander's residence, there were now 3 new residents. Fu Shan soon learned of this, but he didn't care much about it. The 3 new Holy Nether Guards weren't willing to submit to their fate and tried to resist. They were all newcomers, so it was normal for them to attach themselves to Yao Bin. However, the only thing that left him puzzled was that Yao Bin was far too quiet. He didn't know why, but he felt a bit restless in his heart. He always felt that this surname Yao would stir up some great event one day. Qin Yu continued his routine every day. His life hadn't changed much from before, but when he cultivated he was a bit more cautious and avoided the attention of Wang Chao and the others. Knowing that Qin Yu didn't want to get too close to them, Wang Chao and the others didn't try to approach him. However, in order to show their sincerity and obedience, the three of them were still cautious and tried to add points in Qin Yu's heart. For instance, when he was cultivating, the three of them would discreetly spread out and wander around him. When Qin Yu rested, he would diligently clean up the ruins of the residence. Occasionally, they would come to greet him. Their voices were respectful, but they didn't delay him. They came in a hurry and left in a hurry. On the surface, Qin Yu didn't seem to care. But he was carefully scrutinizing the three of them, gradually washing away his suspicions. Wang Chao and the others shouldn't have been sent here to deal with him. Moreover, taking a step back, as long as he was careful enough, no matter how good their acting skills were, it would be impossible for them to harm him with their strength. But Qin Yu didn't show any intention of accepting them. Like an eagle, he had to make them remember just how difficult it was to obtain his trust. Only like this would they cherish this trust in the future. Since Qin Yu had decided to walk the road to the heavens without any support, he naturally had to create a team that would follow him and be loyal to him. But while Qin Yu was peacefully cultivating and didn't want to cause any trouble, there were some people that didn't want to see him jump around like this. Although the endless sea was a forbidden land, as long as one had enough strength and patience, they would eventually find a chance to attack. The Mu family had prepared for a long time. Now, they finally thrust out their sword. They used the laws of spring and autumn, without the slightest trace of blood. In the end, the talent of a white sun boundary martial artist wasn't ordinary. Even if everyone knew that it was them who did this, there was no evidence. This would save them a great deal of trouble. On this day, Wang Chao, who was patrolling, stopped a holy nether guard outside the door. "Who are you?" The holy nether guard cupped his hands together, his voice anxious. "I have been ordered to inform Lord Commander that a forbidden land in Holy Nether City has suddenly opened. Lord Fu Shan and the others have already rushed over. This matter is of great importance, so I ask that Lord Commander immediately go." Wang Chao's heart skipped a beat. The Holy Nether Guard had always been the most mysterious inheritance in the Holy Palace. He didn't dare to be careless. Who knew if something bad would happen? "I'll have to ask you to wait a moment. I will immediately go in and report." A moment later, Qin Yu appeared outside the mansion. After Wang Chao and the other two had repaired the mansion, it had restored a bit of its former glory. At the very least, standing here wouldn't make one feel awkward. What happened? The Holy Nether Guard was even more anxious. "Lord Commander, this matter is extremely urgent. Please follow me and I will tell you everything on the way." Qin Yu frowned. He nodded and said, "Lead the way." Wang Chao and the other two were about to follow when they were stopped by the Holy Nether Guard. "Commander, this matter involves the secrets of the Holy Nether Guard. What do you think?" Qin Yu lifted a hand. "You all stay behind." "Thank you for your understanding, Commander." The guard hurriedly led the way as he explained the situation. The cultivation method passed down by the Holy Nether Guard was to absorb the slaughter energy from underground and fuse it into one's body, turning it into tyrannical strength. The advantage of this cultivation method was that one's strength rose quickly and it was also powerful. In a desperate battle, it could capture the heart and soul of an enemy. The disadvantage was that one's mind would be affected. Normally, the Holy Nether Guard had a special soul protection technique that could suppress the violence in their hearts so that they wouldn't lose control. But once the slaughter energy from underground erupted, it would break through the bottom line of the mind and cause the Holy Nether Guard to lose control on a large scale, causing terrifying consequences. The Holy Nether Guard anxiously said, "Lord Commander, the place where we cultivate and absorb slaughter energy originally has a powerful seal suppressing it. But for some unknown reason, the seal has suddenly broken. The situation is extremely urgent." He looked up at the completely sealed carriage and forced a smile. "In order to prevent news from leaking out and causing widespread panic, I can only have Lord Commander hide here. This is really disrespectful." Qin Yu's eyes flashed. Before entering the Endless Sea, Zhao Qinyuan had hurriedly met with him and told him some matters regarding the Holy Nether Guard. This was one of them. Could it be that he was overthinking things and there really was an accident today? After a long time, the carriage stopped. It seemed that the journey was far. The Holy Nether Guard pushed open the carriage and jumped down. "Lord Commander, the seal is in front of us. We don't have the qualifications to enter, so we can only send you here." Qin Yu stepped out. He looked at the place where the guard was pointing and his pupils shrank. He slowly said, "Are you sure it's this place?" With just these words, the two Holy Nether Guards who were leading the way and driving the carriage caught their breath. "Yes, Lord Fu Shan is inside." They braced themselves and said. They seemed to realize how stiff they were at this time and their hearts constantly sank. Because the two of them had their heads lowered, they didn't notice the strange look that flashed across Qin Yu's face. He looked at this common-looking low-lying area in front of him and his lips curved up in a smile. Chapter 534. 3 days ago, the City Lord mansion that was gradually being cleared out of the ruins had experienced a small-scale earthquake. Besides damaging some of the work that Wang Chao and the others had done, there wasn't any real impact. But it still interrupted Qin Yu's thoughts. Surprised, he walked out of the stone house that was a living room and cultivation room. He frowned, a bit puzzled. Holy Nether City floated in the depths of the Endless Sea. If it couldn't even offset the fluctuations of the sea, it would have been destroyed countless times over. What was happening today? Before he could think further, he saw Wang Chao and the others running towards him in a panic. Yellow Mountain's eyes were closed as he was dragged behind by the two of them. His face was pale and he had a pitiful appearance. Hua Yanting's voice was panicked. Second brother, don't scare me. Wake up." Qin Yu furrowed his eyebrows. Because of his rich experience, he could immediately tell that something was wrong with Yellow Mountain. Pill poison. And it was an extremely fierce pill poison. For better or worse, Yellow Mountain was at the early Blue Sea realm, but he had been knocked down in the blink of an eye without even having time to say a few words. Wang Chao knelt down with a thud. "Commander, please save Yellow Mountain. We will do anything to repay your kindness." He had already tried, but there was nothing he could do. Now, asking Qin Yu for help was only an instinct. Every time danger approached, they would subconsciously approach existences that were more powerful. After kneeling down, Wang Chao reacted and felt a bit of regret. If Qin Yu couldn't save Yellow Mountain, there would inevitably be a grudge between the two of them. How could he hold on to Qin Yu in the future? But what left him pleasantly surprised was that Qin Yu actually agreed. "Put him down. Luckily you came quickly. If you delayed any longer, even an immortal wouldn't be able to save him." Hua Yanting put down Yellow Mountain. He had a nervous expression as he stared at Qin Yu. He saw Qin Yu squat down and reach out a hand to touch between Yellow Mountain's eyebrows. There weren't any fluctuations of strength at all. Could he save someone just by touching them? Hua Yanting gulped, his expression even more nervous. He looked up at Wang Chao, who slowly shook his head at him. Since Qin Yu had already made his move, they could only wait. There was no way he would give up midway. Otherwise, how could they survive in the future? Wang Chao's heart was in a mess. He was thinking about what would happen if Yellow Mountain died. It wasn't that he didn't want his brother to live a good life, but Qin Yu's current performance made him feel uncertain. Suddenly, Huayanting cried out in alarm. Wang Chao's heart skipped a beat. When he regained his wits, he saw that Huang Shan's pale face had regained some color. He subconsciously opened his mouth wide, and his mind was filled with one thought: is this even possible? To be exact, it was very good. Faint traces of black poison energy appeared on Yellow Mountain's face, gathering between his eyebrows and vanishing into Qin Yu's fingertips. Then, he groaned and slowly opened his eyes. After a short moment of confusion, he suddenly roared, "Boss, third brother, run!" "Ah, Commander, why are you here?" Wang Chao slapped him on the head and berated, "What are you doing? Do you know that you almost lost your life? Hurry up and thank the commander. If it wasn't for his excellency, you would already be dead." Huang Shan seemed to have thought of something and shivered. He crawled up and wanted to salute, but his body was weak and he almost fell down. Huayanting hurriedly held him up. Qin Yu waved his hand. "There's no need for such empty formalities. Huang Shan, tell me, what happened?" Huang Shan respectfully said, "Big brother Wang Chao said that the courtyard where the commander usually rests is too abandoned, so he had me go and clean it up. This brat, he still didn't forget to show off his merits." Qin Yu smiled helplessly. The strategy was formulated by Wang Chao, but he had an awkward expression at this time. He quickly said, "What nonsense are you talking about? Hurry up and tell me what's important." Huang Shan felt a bit wronged. "Big brother, you told me to get points whenever I could, so why are you blaming me?" But he didn't dare to beat around the bush. Just now, the garden suddenly shook, and then a crack appeared near the wall. This subordinate happened to be not far away, and before I could react, a black poisonous gas sprayed out. This subordinate had already held his breath, but his vision still went black, and he fainted. As if he thought his experience was too shameful, Huang Shan revealed an awkward expression. "When I woke up, I was already here." Wang Chao felt that second brother really didn't know how to show off. "Even if I asked you to get to the point, you didn't have to be so brief." But before he could signal him with his eyes, Qin Yu directly said, "Take me to the crack." Huang Shan's eyes widened. Qin Yu said lightly, "Once we find the place, you can stay there." Soon, the group entered the backyard of the mansion. In fact, Qin Yu didn't need Huang Shan to tell him to find the place. The courtyard wall that had collapsed was originally covered with lush vegetation. Some kind of bamboo with sharp thorns occupied a large area. But now, these bamboos, which usually bared their fangs and brandished their claws in the wind, had all withered, their yellow leaves falling to the ground. Qin Yu raised his hand to stop Wang Chao, who was about to show his loyalty, and walked toward the bamboo. Soon, he saw the crack that Huang Shan had mentioned. He reached out and touched the withered bamboo. Sure enough, he felt wisps of pill poison seeping into his body, just like the one in Huang Shan's body. Qin Yu's eyes brightened. He stared at the crack, a look of interest on his face. Pill poison wouldn't appear out of thin air. Wherever it existed, there would inevitably be waste pills. Moreover, looking at the intensity of the pill poison, the waste pills here weren't simple. For others, the first thing they would do after discovering this place would be to move and hide as far away as possible. But in Qin Yu's eyes, pill poison was a tonic. Perhaps these waste pills were a catalyst for his cultivation. He subconsciously licked his lips. He didn't know why, but he had a premonition that these waste pills he discovered today would give him a great surprise. Borrowing the power of the cosmic Seacross bell, he carefully sensed his surroundings. When he didn't notice anyone secretly watching him, he leapt into the crack as Wang Chao and the others watched in shock. "Commander!" Wang Chao's heart nearly jumped out of his chest. What are you doing? Our future is all on you. If something happens, Hua Yanting calmed down. Big brother, don't worry. Since the commander dares to go in, he must have some confidence in himself. Moreover, he easily helped second brother detoxify the poison just now. Wang Chao took a deep breath and nodded. He hoped that was the case. Qin Yu jumped into the crack. His feet tapped the ground several times and he rapidly fell down. In the darkness, his eyes were bright and he could see as if it were daytime. There was still pill poison in the air that hadn't yet dispersed, and the concentration was even higher. This caused Qin Yu to be even more excited, because there was definitely a considerable number of waste pills. But suddenly, he came to a stop. His palm sank into a large stone embedded in the ground and he frowned as he looked down. The crack continued to extend, not changing at all from the path above. But in Qin Yu's eyes, an invisible net had appeared. The power of rules. That wasn't completely correct. This was because it was clear that there was the power of an array formation hidden within. This was the power of an array formation that drove the rules and formed an imprisoning strength. Qin Yu furrowed his eyebrows. After a long time, he sighed, a helpless look on his face. He had been interested in array formations for many years, but unfortunately, he hadn't had a chance to study them. Although he had some understanding of them now, he clearly didn't have a chance to break through this array formation. Moreover, this was deep in the Endless Sea, in Holy Nether City. Why would this array formation appear without reason? He feared that as soon as he tried, he would be immediately discovered. After thinking about it again and again, he couldn't think of a solution. Qin Yu could only suppress his unwillingness and fly out of the crack. This caused the worried Wang Chao and the other two to heave a sigh of relief. Commander, are you all right? Qin Yu frowned. He waved his hand and looked outwards. His eyes fell on the edge of Holy Nether City. After a moment of thought, he stepped forwards and quietly flew out. Soon, he arrived at a low-lying area not too far away from the residence. Because he had left behind a soul mark, Qin Yu could sense where he was just now. He had sunk very deep into the ground, but because of the angle, the distance wasn't too far. And indeed, in this place, Qin Yu saw the net of rules once more, covering the entire area. He clearly knew that there was a massive number of extraordinary waste pills here, one that was likely to be of great use to him. Yet, he couldn't go in and take them. To Qin Yu, this was like looking at a treasure that he could only see but couldn't touch. The torment in his heart wasn't worth mentioning to others. Wang Chao and the other two hesitated for a long time before following him out. They saw Qin Yu staring at the open space in a daze. They glanced at each other, puzzled. Lord Commander, did you discover something? Wang Chao boldly asked. This was because he discovered that Qin Yu seemed to have accepted them in his heart. Helping Yellow Mountain cure the poison was the best proof. And indeed, Qin Yu paused for a moment and slowly nodded. Yellow Mountain was struck by pill poison just now. I chased after him, but unfortunately, there was a great array formation isolating me from entering. But the source of the pill poison should be here. Yellow Mountain's face immediately paled. Pill poison. Anyone with a bit of experience would know that this wasn't something to be provoked. If they weren't careful, their entire life would be over. Moreover, the state of their death was often extremely miserable. For instance, they would rot away and melt into water. Just thinking about it left them cold. Wang Chao's face turned green. He looked at this low-lying area and then at the ruined residence not too far away. His throat couldn't help but roll up and down. He wanted to ask, Lord Commander, just how disgusting are you? Not only are you arranged to live in such a damned place, but you're also placed so close to such a dangerous danger zone. That's no different from sitting on a barrel of oil. Perhaps one day you'll die with a loud bang. Say, what sort of waste pills are buried here? Qin Yu whispered, as if he were asking himself. He was really curious. As Wang Chao was thinking about how to persuade Qin Yu to move away, his heart trembled. The commander didn't seem afraid at all. In fact, he was filled with curiosity. After 3 seconds of silence, he decided that he had to shock Qin Yu. Otherwise, from the looks of it, not only would Qin Yu not move away, but he would likely stay here even more eagerly. What to do? What to do? His thoughts raced. Suddenly, Wang Chao's eyes brightened. He thought of a secret he had inadvertently heard from an elder of the Holy Palace. His mind raced and he increasingly felt that this was the place. Then, his originally panicked heart was immediately filled with fear. He absolutely couldn't stay in this place for another day. Wang Chao took a deep breath. His complexion was incomparably solemn. Lord Commander, this subordinate has a life or death matter to report. Qin Yu glanced at him. He lightly said, "Speak." This glance caused Wang Chao's scalp to tighten. He felt as if his entire being had been seen through. But, he could only suppress the panic in his heart and say, "Many years ago, not long after this subordinate entered the True Demon Guard, I learned of an extremely secretive piece of information from a senior at a banquet. The commander possesses the demon body's great solar realm talent and is an unrivaled proud son of heaven of my demonic path. You should know that there is a powerful supplementary pill that can assist one in cultivating the demon body." Qin Yu's eyes flashed. Demon body tempering pill. Wang Chao nodded. That is the pill. But in this world, no matter how brilliant the Grandmaster, there is always a risk of failure. Because of the materials used to refine the demon body tempering pill, once it is discarded, the pill toxins it produces are especially terrifying. In order to deal with pill toxins, it is rumored that the demonic path spent a great deal of resources to construct a great array formation in the Endless Sea. They used the vast and mighty strength of the Endless Sea to quietly annihilate the pill toxins. He took a deep breath and spat out the key words. I suspect that what the commander found today is the place where the demon body tempering pill was destroyed. If he could turn back time, Wang Chao swore that he wouldn't have said half a word more. Because before he finished speaking, Qin Yu's calm eyes suddenly brightened. Are you sure? Wang Chao gulped. I cannot be completely sure, but the possibility is high. Why did he feel as if things had suddenly spiraled out of his control? Qin Yu took a deep breath. His thoughts raced and his eyes became increasingly bright, like stars in the night sky. There's no smoke without fire. Since Wang Chao heard the rumors, it is likely true. If the demonic path fears the demon body tempering pills so much, even if they want to borrow the strength of the Endless Sea to destroy it, they will definitely order people to keep an eye on it. It is impossible for them to ignore it. If so, then it is reasonable to build it in Holy Nether City. The array formation I saw before uses the power of the array formation to drive countless rules, weaving together into a net that completely isolates the inside from the outside. Such a powerful array formation naturally consumes a terrifying amount of energy to arrange. If there wasn't a necessary reason, it would never appear in the Endless Sea. There is also the pill poison in Yellow Mountain. Not even a blue sea cultivation could resist it. Perhaps only the demonic path's incomparably cautious demon body tempering pill could release such a terrifying poison. Combining all of these factors together, Qin Yu took a deep breath. His intuition had been correct. These waste pills would have an extremely important use for him. That's right, Qin Yu had tried to refine them. The effects of a single demon body tempering pill weren't good and the increase in strength was negligible. But what if there was enough of them? If one wasn't enough, then he would take 10. If 10 weren't enough, then he would take 100, 1,000. The accumulation of quantity would eventually lead to a qualitative change. In the demonic path, the demon body tempering pill was incomparably precious and rare. It was a divine pill that countless people yearned for even in their dreams. But the more precious a pill was, the more difficult it was to refine it. Behind a perfect pill, it often meant the birth of 3 or even more waste pills. If all the failed demon body tempering pills were here, then how many would there be left? Even if the strength of the endless sea would constantly grind away at them, the rich pill poison that Qin Yu had experienced not too long ago was proof that there were many of them. At this moment, it was like a fire had been lit in Qin Yu's heart. He could almost confirm that this place in front of him was where the demon body tempering pills waste pills were buried. But what followed was an even greater depression. This was because he discovered that even though he knew of such important and exciting news, he still couldn't move forwards. He could only stare helplessly at the treasure that could greatly shorten the time it took him to reach the demon body saint level, but he couldn't even eat a single bite of it. Qin Yu's eyes darkened and his complexion paled. This caused Wang Chao to lose the courage to continue persuading Qin Yu. He realized that he had done something that he thought he was smart, but in actuality he had done something incredibly stupid. Reality proved that his premonition wasn't wrong. This was because not only did Qin Yu not have any intention of moving, but he even erupted with great enthusiasm towards this terrifying danger zone. Although he didn't say anything, Wang Chao and the others could clearly feel the urgency and helplessness in Qin Yu's heart. He seemed as if he wanted to go in. After realizing this, the 3 of them fell silent for a long time. They looked up at the skies, speechless, wondering if their decision was wrong. Please, this was a place where the demon body tempering pills waste pills were buried. The pill toxins were so terrifying that even a calamity immortal wouldn't dare to easily approach. That's right, you are indeed fierce. You were able to calmly and casually dispel the pill toxins. One didn't need to be a genius to know that the amount of pill toxins within must have reached an unimaginable level, and it might even have produced some sort of terrifying mutation. If you went in, the only option you had was to die. Although their lives weren't too long, because of their status as true demon guards, for better or worse they had seen and experienced many things. Yet, this was the first time they had seen such a suicidal person, and what left them even more speechless was that this person was the thigh they were planning to cling onto, the hope that would help them rise in the future. Moreover, they had spent a great deal of effort to obtain his initial approval. Just as they were about to celebrate, what a sad reality. Luckily, the commander had encountered a difficult problem. He didn't seem to have any way to quietly rush in, but if he tried to openly destroy it, he would inevitably be stopped. This caused Wang Chao and the others to feel a little more at ease. But they didn't dare to be careless. Thus, after the 3 of them discussed it, they decided to guard the various exits to prevent the commander from losing his life in a moment of anger. Thus, when the Holy Nether Guards came to report, they encountered Wang Chao who was guarding the main entrance. Qin Yu looked at the 2 stiff Holy Nether Guards in front of him. He really wanted to remind them that they weren't made to be bad people. The reason he had such a strange thought was because his mind was surging with excitement. He didn't know who had sent these 2 guards, but at this moment he really wanted to personally thank them. He had thought about it for 3 days but hadn't been able to find an opportunity, and now someone had actually prepared it and offered it to him with both hands. The Holy Nether Guard trembled. "My lord, is there something wrong?" Qin Yu looked at his nervous appearance, afraid that he would turn and run in the next moment. He took a deep breath and earnestly nodded. "No, nothing at all." He strode forwards, his speed fast, as if he were afraid he wouldn't be able to keep up. As for the net of rules that imprisoned and isolated him, it had already vanished from sight. To accomplish this wasn't an easy matter at all. There might even be people who risked their lives to help him. And all of this was to help him pave the way in. There was no need to say anything else. There were many good people in this world. Thank you all, 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 thank you all 18 generations of ancestors, every man, woman, child, chicken, duck, cat, dog, as the two holy nether guards watched Qin Yu's hurried back disappear from their line of sight. They were stunned for a long time. It was only then that they regained their composure. They wondered if their flaws just now weren't obvious enough, or was this new commander blind? But soon, the two of them tossed these untimely thoughts to the back of their minds. They glanced at each other and could feel the surprise and apprehension in each other's hearts. No matter what, their mission had been completed. They nodded to each other and quickly drove away. They had to erase all traces of themselves in the shortest time possible in order to extricate themselves from the upcoming storm. Chapter 535. The Sky Corps Division's Deputy Zhang Yuanlin paled as he looked at the chaotic scene in front of him. He used all of his strength to barely suppress the roar that rushed to his lips, as well as the fear and panic in the depths of his heart. Elder Qing Ruhong had gone into seclusion not too long ago and had delegated all authority over the Sky Corps Division to him. But, who would have thought that just as he grasped this authority, before he could even taste the taste of being in a superior position, such a great mess would occur. As the organization that controlled and maintained all the spells and array formations of the demonic path, the Sky Corps Division had great authority. They covered nearly every aspect of the demonic path, and correspondingly, they had to shoulder even more responsibilities. They had to ensure that all the spells and arrays operated in an orderly manner and that any flaws were promptly repaired. Once a mistake occurred, it was fine if there weren't any serious consequences. Otherwise, even if he had 3 heads and 6 arms, he still wouldn't be able to cut them down. Zhang Yuanlin didn't have 3 heads and 6 arms. So, after his initial rage, his focus shifted from finding the one who had caused this chaos to praying that nothing happened. Otherwise, no matter what happened, he would inevitably receive the cruelest and most merciless judgment. He didn't dare to think of the consequences. Luckily, Elder Qing had always been fair in her punishments and rewards. After many years of training, the Sky Corps Division now had an experienced and formidable team. After a brief period of panic, they immediately began to repair the damage. News continued to arrive. The situation was rapidly improving and they were back in control. Zhang Yuanlin silently thanked the heavens above. From what he knew, there shouldn't have been any major trouble. Although he wouldn't be able to escape a reprimand, he was still satisfied with this result. But as Deputy Zhang was filled with gratitude, another news arrived. Before he could open the jade slip, he could see the pale complexion of the messenger. Zhang Yuanlin's heart shrank as a foreboding premonition rose in his heart. Without caring about maintaining his composure, he grabbed the jade slip and probed it with his divine sense. His body shook and his vision darkened. Something had happened to the Endless Sea's mystic array. As the deputy of the Sky Corps Division, Zhang Yuanlin had recently obtained the qualifications to know some secrets of the demonic path. As for the Endless Sea's mystic array, before Elder Qing went into seclusion, she had warned him to carefully inspect it and ensure that there were no problems. When Zhang Yuanlin first learned that this array formation had a demon body tempering pill sealed within it, he had been left stunned. He naturally understood just how important this array formation was, but now, something had actually happened to it. It wasn't just a small area of damage, but the entire array formation had stopped operating for an hour. Zhang Yuanlin felt as if he had fallen into an icy abyss when he thought about the terrifying pill poison that Elder Qing had solemnly mentioned, as well as the terrifying consequences that could result from it. He felt as if his life was coming to an end. The phrase, "all hopes turn to dust," was an apt description for his current state. The cultivator who delivered the jade slip moved his lips and said in a low voice, "Deputy Zhang, Actually, this matter can be suppressed. Zhang Yuanlin's eyes darted around for a moment before regaining some of their luster. She stared straight at Zhang Xian. The man licked his lips. If it were in other places, we wouldn't be able to struggle. However, the secret formation is built in the endless sea. As long as we block the transmission channel, this news won't spread out. No one will investigate. After the matter is over, we can easily find countless reasons to deal with it. He swept his eyes around. There aren't many people that know of this matter. Moreover, as long as you make a move, no one will interfere. No one wants to take responsibility for this. Zhang Yuanlin's heartbeat sped up. He licked his lips and his eyes brightened. When a person was in a desperate situation, they would grab onto any life-saving straw with all their might. Moreover, although this method was risky, it was highly feasible. If he won the gamble, he would still be the number 2 figure of the Sky Hub division with great authority and endless glory. The cultivator who delivered the letter didn't say anything more. He respectfully bowed and excused himself. As he turned around, a bit of satisfaction flashed in his eyes. Once Zhang Yuanlin made a move, even if he had 100 mouths he still wouldn't be able to explain himself. He had already made preparations to cleanly strip himself of all responsibility. Of course, this was an arrangement made for the worst-case scenario. Perhaps it wouldn't even be used. This was the pill poison of the demon body tempering pill. It was said that even calamity immortals wouldn't be able to resist it. Even if one had the talent of a white sun boundary, wouldn't they still die if they went in? Cloud Grove City, Mu family. Mu Xianglin exerted a bit of strength in his fingers and crushed the jade slip. The jade slip slid down his fingertips and fell to the ground. He revealed a satisfied smile. He had always believed that as long as one put in enough effort, there was nothing that couldn't be done. Now, the results proved that his point of view was correct. Demon Envoy, do you think that the Mu family can't do anything to Yaobin just because you sent him to the endless sea? Bide your time, hide your strength, hide your strength. What a pity, I won't give him any chance to grow. He let out a long breath. This depression had been weighing down on his heart ever since the demon body talent test. Now that he was finally able to let it out, his spirits rose. Some emotions that he hadn't felt in a long time suddenly ignited in his chest, rushing straight down to his stomach. The excitement of destroying a white sun boundary naturally needed some channels to fully vent it. Come, select 10 new maids and bring them to my room. Tell them that I will be resting for 2 days and that they are not to disturb me unless there is something important. There was a respectful response from outside the door, and the sound of footsteps hurried away. A moment later, from Mu Xianglin's massive and luxurious room, bursts of tender cries echoed out. All sorts of sounds entangled together, causing one's blood to boil. As Mu Xianglin was recklessly enjoying these youthful, delicate, and beautiful bodies, he probably never imagined what sort of result his actions today would bring to the Mu family. Rumble, rumble, rumble. Seawater surged like roaring thunder. The terrifying sound waves entered the ears, causing their eardrums to shake and ring. And what was even more astonishing was that even if one blocked out the 5 senses, these sound waves could still reach into their soul space, making it impossible to avoid the pleasurable feeling it brought. And the source of this endless and terrifying sound waves was the giant yin-yang fish that was crazily spinning above his head. A bright light flashed in Qin Yu's eyes. Then, the rapidly spinning yin-yang fish seemed to slow down by a great deal as their true appearance appeared in front of him. The yin-yang fish were connected head to tail. The black part was Qin Yu's goal for coming here. It was the demon body tempering pill waste pills that the demonic path had accumulated for countless years. But at this time, a part of his attention was uncontrollably diverted to the pure white part of the yin-yang fish. This was because this dazzling white light came from the 9 great suns in the skies of the demonic path's small world. However, the extremely thin power of the great suns in the outside world seemed to be because of the effects of the array formation or perhaps because of the endless years of accumulation, but the density was shockingly high. Yu could clearly see that the power of the 9 suns was slowly neutralizing and counteracting the pill toxins, gradually turning the waste pill into ashes. Then, the ashes were like tiny specks of dust that slowly fell to the ground. Therefore, under the huge yin-yang fish, the gray, harmless dust had accumulated layer after layer over the years, turning into a jaw-dropping hill. Borrowing the power of the endless sea to counteract pill toxins, this was clearly wrong. Perhaps the endless sea played a key role in this, but what truly destroyed the pill toxins was the power of the small world's 9 suns. Yu suddenly realized something. It seemed that the rumors of the endless sea counteracting pill toxins were deliberately spread out by the demonic path. The reason was simple. The power of the small world's 9 suns was originally a strength that all demonic path cultivators shared. But, a part of it was collected and gathered deep within the endless sea to counteract pill toxins. Looking at it from another angle, this was the same as sacrificing the benefits of many demonic path cultivators in order to help those who cultivated the demon body walk faster. After all, the reason the waste pills and pill toxins were produced was because they wanted to obtain a qualified demon body tempering pill. For a transcendent influence like the demonic path, it was important to maintain internal balance so that there wouldn't be any hidden dangers left behind. Yu shook his head and suppressed these thoughts. He looked up at the yin-yang fish and began to consider just how he could smoothly obtain the black portion of the waste pills. In his eyes, the rapidly spinning yin-yang fish contained an extremely formidable strength to begin with. Moreover, there was a certain balance between the two sides. Yu wasn't sure what would happen if this balance was broken. This caused him to think of some unpleasant memories. For instance, when he cultivated the primordial singular energy art, he had been schemed against by that old witch Purple Moon and failed at the last moment, causing the yin and yang energies to explode. If it weren't for Undying helping him, then he would have died without a grave. The yin-yang fish above his head, no matter how he looked at it, contained an energy far more terrifying than the yin and yang energies of the past. Even though Yu wasn't the same as he was in the past, he still didn't have much confidence he could resist it. And most importantly, Undying had helped him escape from Four Seasons City like a cicada shedding its carapace and had fallen into a deep slumber. Even now, he still hadn't woken up. Yu frowned. Could it be that the saying was true? Why was it so difficult to obtain the waste pills? Since he had come in, it was impossible for him to leave empty-handed. If he couldn't think of a way, then he could only use force. Yu's complexion was cloudy and uncertain. As he thought about how powerful the Emperor-level demon body was, even if there was an accident, he still wouldn't die tragically from the explosion, right? He clenched his teeth. Just as he was about to decide to take this risk, a sigh came from the shadow beneath his feet. My dear little master, it's a good thing I woke up in time, otherwise I would have to wait until the future to clean up your broken corpse. A wriggling shadow rose up. This was the Undying he had just thought of. Yu was overjoyed. Undying, you woke up. Feeling the joy and relief in Yu's voice, Undying's heart warmed. He cupped his hands together and said, I shouldn't have woken up so early, but who told Master to find such a tempting thing? Just smelling it makes me drool. I can't sleep even if I wanted to. He looked up at the yin-yang fish and sighed. Within his soul space, Mei nodded again and again, a gratified expression on her face. Indeed, the Yu brand food detector was sharp and useful. The Purple Moon gently cried out, indicating that it had a part in this. Yu's complexion was strange. He looked at Undying and said, I can roughly guess what you want, so I'll tell you ahead of time. The two evil guests in my soul space already have their own reservations. Undying smiled and nodded. Of course I can. I can't finish it myself. His feet turned into a phantom and he drilled into the yin-yang fish. Chinyu wasn't able to see his movements before the waste pills fell to the ground. At the same time, a massive halo of pure white light overflowed from the yin-yang fish like a white cloud in the skies. Mei Mei cheered. She lifted a hand and directly tore away a quarter of the white cloud. The purple moon followed close behind. A faint purple light flashed and only half of the white cloud remained. Undying's figure appeared. He laughed and took half of the white cloud. He slapped it onto his body and fused it in, a satisfied expression on his face. Thus, there was still a quarter left over. As Chinyu was puzzled, the blue sun in his Dantian Sea suddenly emitted a fluctuation. With a whoosh, the final white cloud vanished from sight. Little Master, our ability is limited so we can only take this much at once. Once I finish absorbing it, I will come back to help you. Undying looked deeply at Chinyu. He knew many of Chinyu's secrets, but Undying knew that he had yet to touch upon Chinyu's greatest secret. In fact, he instinctively didn't dare to investigate it, because doing so would likely bring about horrifying consequences. Undying had great faith in his own intuition. Thus, although he was curious, he absolutely didn't ask Chinyu what he wanted these toxic waste pills for. Schwa, Undying turned and melted into the shadows. His soul space quieted down with it. Chinyu didn't have time to ponder the meaning behind Undying's final gaze. His eyes fell on the pile of waste pills on the ground and he couldn't help but smile. With a rough glance, there were at least 1,000 or 2,000 waste pills. After purifying them and refining them, he should be able to obtain 700 to 800 demon body tempering pills or even more. Chinyu looked up at the giant yin-yang fish and then at the pile of waste pills on the ground. It was like he could see the saint-step demon body beckoning at him. There was no need to say anything else. Hurry up and do it. His mind stirred. Because he had already communicated with him, the space in front of him suddenly collapsed and the phantom of a great sun appeared. At this moment, an invisible might had locked down the surrounding space-time. Even the independent consciousnesses attached to Chinyu were completely blocked out, making it impossible for him to sense the outside world. Within the shadow world, Undying sat on his throne. He suddenly opened his eyes, a dignified expression on his face. It really did descend again. I'm really curious. Just what sort of strength can possess such terrifying might? However, as he thought about how the one who possessed this mystical might was Chinyu, Undying's complexion became much better. Since he had made his final decision, the stronger Chinyu was, the better. It had to be known that whether it was him or Spirity who was constantly withstanding the pain, neither of them had the chance to fail again. Otherwise, they would be doomed for all eternity. Within his soul space, Mimi's lips moved, but in the end she didn't say a word. When she chose to join forces with Chinyu, it wasn't because she was frightened. It was only through her keen senses that she discovered an extremely formidable aura coming from Chinyu's body. Although she felt this aura appearing on Chinyu's body was inconceivable, it was enough for her to change her mind. Perhaps the hope of her people, the chance to change the shackles of their destiny, really lay on Chinyu's body. Feeling the current shielding, Mimi blinked at Purple Moon, as if saying, "You arrogant little big sister, why aren't you flipping out?" Unfortunately, Purple Moon was calm and quiet. Because of Mimi's provocation, she didn't reveal any fluctuations. In this world, everything was obtained for a variety of reasons. It wasn't something that could be decided by pure luck. Otherwise, a pleasant surprise could instantly turn into a fright, and a lucky chance could cause one's life to be ruined. Chi knew never doubted that the reason he was able to reach this step today was all because of that night many years ago when he had impulsively followed behind Purple Moon. Before he fell unconscious, he had grasped that trace of deep blue light. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.